In this free web design course, you'll learn every step of the professional web design process, and you'll build a full project along with me. We're going to start with strategy and structure, and then we're going to move into the full design phase and even develop the website without writing a single line of code. You're going to get a complete crash course in professional web design, techniques like wireframing and color theory, the tools of the trade like Figma and Framer, and some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way over my 18-year design career. You're going to be building a project along with me, so it's not going to be a bunch of theory, but practical application, so that by the time you're done with this free course, you can design and publish simple websites for paying clients. All right, let's dive into this web design course, starting by talking about the process, because there's a lot of different processes and ways in which you can design and sell websites. And if we think about it like a spectrum, on maybe one far end of the spectrum, you have really low impact, cheap, customizable templates that you can sell for anywhere between $500 and $1,500. That's a totally different method and process that we're not going to focus on in this course because it lacks any sort of customization, and it also is not going to really bring you the type of revenue most likely to be a very successful or renowned web designer. On the other far end of the spectrum, you have really high ticket offerings. We're talking six figures, multiple six-figure requirement websites. So we're talking about a website that costs $150,000 to $200,000, high enterprise, year-long projects. It's going to be very, very draining. And with both of these far ends of the spectrum, it's not going to be the common method that most freelance web designers are going to experience. So in this course, I want to focus more on a middle-of-the-road method or process. This is going to be a custom process, a professional process. You are going to be doing the design work, doing the visual work, doing the UX work, but we're also going to lean on some established patterns and some tools and tips and tricks to help speed that process. So somewhere in this range that we're talking about today, you could expect to sell websites to clients for anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000, and that the project time might run anywhere between a month and 3 months. That's a pretty solid, and I feel like roundabout, run-of-the-mill process for a good client, a good project, a good portfolio piece, and good revenue to make. And this process that we're going to lay out here can really be broken into 4 parts. Number 1, that's strategy, which consists really of a lot of conversations, a lot of questions, a client questionnaire we'll talk about here in a moment. Part number 2 is the structure, where you're going to do information architecture and UX design. We're going to be doing a bunch of wireframing, sketches, and structure kind of stuff. Number 3 is the design process, where you're going to do color and user interface, typography. We're going to build mood boards and style tiles. And then part 4 is going to be the development phase, where we're actually going to bring everything into Framer, and we'll rapidly build our website in a no-code tool like Framer, and then press that big blue publish button. We will have a live functioning website. So with that being said, let's dive in now to the strategy portion. You have to understand that you're really trying to answer 3 main questions. It is, what do they need? Who are their competitors? And how will we solve their problem? Let's start with that first question of what do they need? And you can really boil this down, no matter who it is, to probably 3 categories. There's lots of different types of websites, different types of clients, e-commerce, portfolio, marketplaces, whatever it is, all of those. It doesn't matter what type of client or website it is. It usually boils down to one of the 3 following reasons or solutions they're coming to you for. They have a problem, and it's probably either one of the 3. Number 1, sales. They're looking for increased revenue, more sales, to get sales started, to double sales. It has to do with revenue and money. That is the number 1 reason, or the number 1 type of problem that you will have to learn how to solve through your web design process. Number 2 problem that you might run into is traffic. They're just looking for more leads, more traffic, more notoriety, more visibility online, because all of that traffic and leads, subscribers, followers, whatever it is, probably later on will convert to sales. And lastly, there is such a thing as the vanity metric. They want to showcase something. They want to share something to the world, and that's okay for a client to want to stroke their own ego and their vanity. Sometimes you want to show up online, show your portfolio. But I will say that whether it's a vanity metric or a traffic metric, most of the time it will eventually, at some point, lead back to sales. If you have a client that comes to you and says that they want something else besides these three things, they just want a website because their friend told them, that's not going to be a good client, and this is not going to be the right process for them. You're either going to waste their money, they're going to be frustrated, or you're not going to be able to solve their problem because they haven't identified a problem. And just needing a website is a very subjective thing, but an objective goal or thing for you to accomplish is to increase any of those metrics we've already talked about. So with that said, how do you find this information? What do they need? I quite often use something called a client survey. I have this in Figma, but I also have a PDF version you could download if you want. This is for a website project. And really, we're just trying to figure out, what do you need? What are you really after? Who are your users and what are they trying to do? And I've broken this down into three pieces here. One is the past. We'll ask them some general information about who they are and what's their current assessment of their website, and what are the problems and objectives, the problems they have with their maybe previous website or no website, and what would they like their objectives to be? How do we want to measure success? And you should walk your clients through a document like this one so that there's a lot of clarity, so that you are aligning on vision and mission and success metrics for this project. Once you get the past stuff, you can start digging into the present. Who are your users? What are their goals? What's the perception of you and your business online? Is there some sort of differentiator? Maybe you're the cheapest one or the fastest one or the coolest one, whatever it is. And then we start talking about content structure. And then after that, we want to talk about the future. Why is it necessary? Describe things for us. We're going to help kind of do a little bit of brand tone work to establish what we need to do in the future and what's the technology stack that it's on and who's going to be maintaining and governing the website project. Now, I know a lot about my current client because he's a friend of mine, so I can answer a lot of this probably off the top of my head, but for you, you're gonna need to spend the time with your client walking through this document. Another quick note here, if your client does not have the time to help you understand this information, they're probably not a good client and you probably don't wanna work with them. They're probably wanting to operate somewhere in that cheap, fast template kind of place. But for clients who really, really want to have an impact, they know their goal, revenue, traffic, vanity, then a process like this is going to be highly valuable to them. So I can tell you personally, for our project, which is my friend who runs a tattoo website or a tattoo studio, his problem is that his old website stopped functioning. And the primary objective of that old website was to get people into a contact form to get him new potential leads. Those leads actually generate revenue when they become not just cold leads or warm leads, but hot leads. And he can actually book them, take their deposit, get them scheduled for an appointment. So that's really his objective. His people, his clientele, his customer base are people usually who are visiting from out of town and looking to establish or set up an appointment for the future. So as I walk through this, I can understand the general information. I know who he is. His current assessment is bad because his website's not functioning. And the problems and objectives really are that old contact form method never really worked great anyways. We want to do better. We want to increase sales and increase traffic. So there's probably going to be some SEO elements to this project that are beyond the scope of this course, but the website needs to look dope. It needs to look amazing. It needs to be enticing. It needs to communicate very clearly to people coming from out of town what they're looking for. So that's some things that are already happening in my mind around SEO, copy, design style. I'm already starting to understand who his current clients are and how I can service them better. And his goals are really to have a functioning website that really brings people into his sales funnel a lot more efficiently. And he wants to be really seen as a safe, professional environment for people. And he has some content that we're going to build on. The idea is to really be that safe, secure, dependable, professional person in the industry for years and years. And technology is going to be very, very big for him because he had his old site built on WordPress. It got malware. The whole thing was hard for him to manage. He needed to update his website. So we're going to move him to a much more modern, hosted, secure platform that he can update things on, like Framer, that allows us to build the website very, very quickly because he is going to be the one governing and maintaining the website. That's a little bit of the strategy. That's that first question. What do they need? Then we start asking the question, who are their competitors? Now, I will tell you that this is the time for you to get online and start searching about their competitors, doing what we call competitive analysis or competitive set. I know him really well, so usually I might ask the client to give me a starter, but I know this industry well, obviously, because I have tattoos and I've been around tattoo artists a lot. So I know that in his industry that tattoo artists notoriously have bad websites. So looking directly in the competitor space or doing a competitive set is going to surface a lot of really bad examples of people who are doing things poorly. So what I would ask him instead is, what are the things you like about some of those competitors and why? And he told me he liked the contact form. He liked how there was a lot of photos. He liked certain things about the photo gallery so people could see his portfolio. So I take all of those with a grain of salt and I think of better solutions for him. So he told me about their competitors, but you should spend some time doing some research, not only from what your client tells you, but from what you can find doing your competitive set. And really what you're trying to do is create an audit or an analysis here. Start to highlight the things that work and don't work. And you want to align those with tried and true web design patterns, things that we know works really, really well, which would be clear call to action, good headline, sub-headline, a really good hero section, easy to have or easy to use navigation. All of these things matter. So figuring out their comps and maybe in their industry and out of their industry is important. But lastly, how will we solve? All of this is under the guise or under the pillar of strategy. We're going to do this with our client. We're going to do this sometimes away from our client, but we're going to present them with a good solution. And that quite often is when you really seal the deal with your potential client, is by sharing with them the plan that you have to solve all of their problems over the coming month or couple of months, and really increase those sales, traffic, or vanity metric. That is where your proposal comes in. We're not going to do a proposal here because that's outside the scope of a web design course, but just know that the strategy happens usually at the beginning of the project. Sometimes you're going to do initial basic strategy to land the client, but you're definitely going to have to do more in-depth strategy when you get the client, solidify the client, so you can understand how you can best serve the client. Next, we're going to move on to structure, because that's really one of the biggest pieces here, is trying to understand the structure of their website. What are their needs? How are you going to put all of this into play? And to do that, we're going to start building out some wireframes and some sitemaps. The structure of a website is really, really important, and it really equates to just a couple of things. Number one, a sitemap, which will be kind of a map of how the pages connect and what type of content needs to go inside of those pages. Number two, you're going to need some content document. We're going to use ChatGPT and some AI tools to kind of help us with that. And then lastly, you're going to have to start wireframing a little bit. And that's going to be the actual content and how it goes on those individual pages that you can find inside of that map. Let's visualize a little bit and talk about a couple of different tools and ways that we can start building out these sitemaps. You can start with a simple Figma file, and we could either sketch here and just write titles, or we could drag shapes inside. So if we instead just, for instance, grab a square, drag this inside, we could put here a home page, and let's make sure we spell that right. And then we could lead that to another page. Maybe, you know, our main navigation items on here are like the about page. Let's see if we can type good today. And you might have another one that is the contact page, and you might have another one that is the gallery or portfolio page, something like this. This is kind of the idea of a sitemap. We're just starting to map things around and figure out what needs to go where. And they're real pliable, you know, inside of Figma files. We could also use a little bit of AI right here, and we could ask it to give us a sitemap for a tattoo website that includes, excuse me, pages for gallery, contact, about me, and a home page. And we could even add a little bit more onto this prompt and say, the goal of the site is to get customers to book. Okay? And with that being said, why don't we try to generate a sitemap right here using Figma's own kind of internal tools. So we have a home page, and it tells us about me, gallery, contact, and there's some sort of call to action or a decision diamond here saying, are you interested in a tattoo? Yes, go to book now. This is a little bit more of a user flow diagram for UI UX design, like applications, mobile apps, but it kind of gets the job done a little bit. There's some other tools online that you might want to use. This one's called Octopus .do, and it is there's a free plan here where you can start actually laying out different sitemaps for projects here. And you can see that like not only do you get like the actual page here, like we could call this the home page, but it'll actually give you like visualizations of the sections. Maybe we have a header, an introduction, services, and we can come into the services page and add some details here. You can also move all of those around a little bit, just like by dragging and dropping. And we can create new pages here. And it's just a really simple, easy way. And once you're done here, if you want to, you could actually share this and get your clients or your customers' feedback by inviting them in, and they can start adding content. This is just one way where you can actually kind of manage some of the project. But another great tool, really popular tool online right now, is called Reloom. Reloom is a way for you to generate really quick like sitemaps and also wireframes. So for instance, you can come in here and start a new project, and I can do kind of a similar prompt that I had back in Figma. So just like this, I'm gonna paste this in and I'll just say a tattoo website that includes pages for gallery, contact, about me, and a homepage. And the goal of the site is to get customers to book. Number of pages, we'll do 1 to 5, and let's generate the sitemap. Now, what's really cool about Reloom is it's going to generate some of the copy that goes inside of us, some of the sections. It's going to make those recommendations. And then it's made the page recommendations here as well. We can actually come in here and say generate content on all of these. And that actually gets us started quite a bit with that copy aspect of it. And if we like this, we can actually click over to wireframes, and you'll see that Reloom is going to start generating some of those wireframes. Now, I said this is a custom process, and you might be saying, what? Like, you're just generating wireframes like that? That feels templated. That doesn't feel like that expensive custom process. But here's the truth. A lot of wireframes end up being the same. We could spend all of our time drawing out wireframes, but this is where a lot of those tried and true solutions really actually kind of the rubber meets the road, right? There's a lot of things that we can do from custom, but we don't necessarily have to do this from custom or start this from scratch. And so with this being said, we could just use some of these. And what's really cool is we can actually come here and we can reshuffle some of the components. So if I click on, for instance, this header, maybe we don't like this header, I can come in here and I can actually switch this header. Let's replace the component, and you can see there's an entire list of headers here that I might be able to switch out, like maybe something like this one. That looks pretty good. But again, this is a very common structure and pattern for us to be using in a website hero section. So again, there's no need to really reinvent the wheel when that wheel is highly accessible, and at the end of the day, this is not going to make or break or cheapen my process. It's just going to speed my process up quite a bit. Okay, so let's say we like what we have going on here. We have a bunch of different styles, and I'm just going to go through and make a couple of edits here. And why don't we replace some of the components there? I like maybe more of the value propositions here. And again, this is just the start. I tend to start out with wireframes, and when I get into the design process, I might see that they're not quite right. I'll tweak and change them. I don't live by them, but I live close to them. It's kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean. They're more like guidelines than they are strict instructions that I must follow. I don't like to paint by numbers. I like to start out with something that gets the juices flowing more than anything. So we have some testimonials. I kind of think about that and I'm like, okay, maybe I want the testimonials closer to the top. So I'm going to zoom out and just drag those up to the top because I want my users to get here really quickly and see what really matters here. And again, like the value propositions, I feel like matter a little bit more. So let's just drag and drop those up above. And we have like maybe an about me section down here and maybe like a booking section. My client also wants to show his gallery, and he also sells like really cool custom high-end jewelry that is like Hawaiian themed because he's in Hawaii. So I want to make sure that there's a space for that as well. So let's take a look at this tattoo portfolio and just regenerate or replace the component. I might do something like that. That looks pretty good. And then I might copy and paste another version of it. And I might move this one up above, and I might get rid of this section. This one's not going to be the tattoo portfolio, but it's going to be maybe a smaller kind of jewelry portfolio. And then, yeah, let's do some FAQs. And then we have a bottom section. Now, this works for me. And you can see we can now go through and do this on all of the other pages for the sake of time. So this is not a 1 week long video. I'm just going to do the home page. And I think this home page looks pretty good. I might make a few other little changes. Like for instance, I might change the type of testimonials that we can see here. I might want to see a few more at one time instead of only being able to see one. Maybe we'll do something like 2 at a time, or probably one more time and do something like 3 at a time even, because we want to get his Yelp reviews in. And look at that, it's writing the copy for us. Obviously, we're going to replace that with real testimonials. But this looks pretty good. Actually, as I started to think about it, I'm like, maybe we'll do something a little bit cleaner, something like that. I don't know. We'll figure that out in design. But this starts to feel like a really, really good structure for me. Now, from here, what I can do is I can grab this entire element here and check it out. I can just copy it directly to Figma. Now, Reloom works really, really well with other platforms. I really like Framer, so I'm just going to pull the design directly from Reloom, bring it into Figma, and later on, we'll do all our design work and we'll push it into Framer. So I'm going to copy to Figma just like that. And it tells me I need the Reloom plugin installed. Let's go back to Figma really quickly. And let's just make sure that I have the plugin installed, which it looks like for some reason I don't. Let's go to plugins like this. And there it is. We're going to run it just like so. And that's installing the plugin. Beautiful, just like that. It looks like we had an untitled project. Probably should title that project. We could do that. But why don't we do this? We're going to click on it and we're going to, we'll actually click in deeper and we'll just take the home page. We can add the entire sitemap and the wireframe. And again, this is something you are going to want to present to your clients as the structure, the information architecture and the wireframe. So why don't we go ahead and just bring in, we'll go back here, and we'll bring in the entire sitemap like that. It's going to bring in everything we just did there. Beautiful. We like that. And then why don't we go into that and just say, I want the wireframe for the home page. Now we could bring all of them in, but like I said, we're only doing the home page for this particular project. And you can see what Reloom is doing for us. It's bringing in a bunch of that content right now. It's going to look real messy as it's doing it, but look at that. Pretty much in an instant, it's not only given us the desktop view or version, but it's also given us the mobile view. So it's done some of that work. And again, this is where a lot of those processes, you don't need to do them by hand. There's really not a huge reason for you to be doing some of these by hand when there's already components that are tried and true, they work really well, and there's already versions of them that are found to be responsive and work well there as well. So with that said, it looks like we have a pretty decent wireframe for our site. We probably should shift our attention over to content. So I'm going to jump back over to the web. And I'm going to jump over to the content section. That means I'm going to open up something like ChatGPT. And you can see here, what I've done is I've already opened up ChatGPT and I've started to feed it information. I gave it the previous website. I said, grab all of that content, scrape that website for content. And I want you to start rewriting sections for me. So it grabbed all the content. It started rewriting things, his welcome or about me sections, his contact information, studio location. And then I started kind of doing a little bit more content work and utilizing ChatGPT to help me get started. Now, one of the things I always like to do when I'm doing content work is I like to do things in the style of Donald Miller, which if you don't know who Donald Miller is, I'll put some links down below in the description. He's basically a marketing and website guru that has a lot of these issues or problems already worked out. He has created systems and processes for the solutions. So I like to actually query ChatGPT and say, hey, wouldn't you give me some what are called overcoming objection statements in the style of Donald Miller, focusing on why users should book a consultation or tattoo. Remember, I'm staying committed to the user's goals or to my client's goals. And what do their users want? They want to book a tattoo. An overcoming objection statement is basically me calming their nerves and answering questions before they even realize they're having them. It's a little bit of Inception. We're going to be Leonardo DiCaprio, like 3 levels deep. So stay with me. We're saying, hey, we want to speak to their needs as they're already thinking about them. They probably have these objections. They're probably thinking to themselves, I'm really concerned about the tattoo design process, or, oh man, I'm really nervous about the commitment, or what about hygiene? Is it safe? Is this artist skilled? I'm probably thinking all of these things as a potential client. And this is where a lot of this structure is really, really important. Your strategy is really going to help you. The better your strategy section is, the stronger that your structure section or work will be. And at the end of the day, you can actually get paid well for ugly websites as long as they're accomplishing their goal of executing upon that strategy. And so much of it has to do with the structure, content, and the funnel, and how you're actually solving the problem. This type of content is solving the problem, and it's content he didn't have on his old site. I said, hey, write me a few more of these, but I need specific ones. How about, and these are directly from my client. These are questions that he gets all the time. How do I know the cost? How do I take care of my tattoo? Can he design something custom for me? So I got a few more. I have a total of 8 overcoming objection statements now. That feels pretty good to me. And when I start thinking about my wireframe that I have here, structure-wise, I go, hey, we have 4 here, but what if I did 8 and all of these became overcoming objection statements? I'm starting to put together the content with the structure or the sections of the website that came from the sitemap, lead back to that strategy work that has been done. And so this is all happening very, very fast. And again, you can do all of this from scratch if you want to. You can hand sketch all of these and create gray boxes, but I like to lean on tools that are using tried and true, trusted things. Now, we will talk about this later. There's going to be a time and a place to break structure, to look at these things and go, this isn't working, and I want to do something unique and amazing and showcase my individual design skills. That's cool. That's amazing. But let those be particular or specific areas, not trying to re-envision and reinvent the wheel every time you come to a new website project, because the process that I'm in right now is already cooking. It's moving along quite quickly. Okay. So now what I can say is, hey, give me some value propositions, some things that are good about my client and why people might want to work with him. I'm saying, hey, expand on this. Remember, we said there was going to be SEO needs. Hey, give me some good SEO words, right? Some content for the page for his about me section. So this is where you start looking at your layout and you start creating specific content and throwing all of that into a content document and actually having your customer or your client speak into that content document. So here I would actually build either like a Google document or a Notion document, and I would start laying all of this content and I would map them back to the pages. And the cool news is you can do that, or you can just skip the content document altogether and you can start implementing it right into the wireframe, because the wireframe happens so quickly. So let the wireframe be your content document. At this point in the course, you could have if you've stopped and paused and got a free Reloom account and set up your Figma file, you could maybe already have potentially a wireframe, a layout, a structure, a sitemap, and some content build for this client or your client that you're working on. So what comes next? Well, this is when we have started to lay out the wireframe and everything, and this is where we want to maybe even present things in a way that are maybe a little bit more beneficial for our client to see. If we really like this structure, let's say we know this structure is going to be exactly the way we want, there are some tools and some tips and tricks that might help you. And this is one of them. I want to just kind of fast forward a little bit. Don't want to blow your mind too much, but instead of building your wireframes inside of Figma, for instance, there is a pathway or a method where you can do really, really rough work inside of Figma, but then immediately start building them inside of Framer using something like this, which is called FramePad. I actually have a copy of FramePad, and it allows you to wireframe really, really quickly. Let me open up Framer and kind of talk through this process if you want to skip altogether. So when you download something like FramePad, we're here inside of Framer, and we just get a file. So what I could do is I could duplicate that file, which I could just come down here and say, why don't I go ahead and duplicate this project? It's going to take a second. And then I basically have a starting project with a bunch of wireframes and components and elements really similar to Reloom, but they're already done for me. The cool thing about this is I can publish this as a staging website instantly. I could publish this as basically a web version of a wireframe that's responsive and adaptive, and I can send my users or my clients a link, and they can actually start giving me feedback directly inside of that link. So let's go back now to FramePad and see that we have a copy that's duplicating. Let me open up the previous one here inside of Framer and show you how this might work. Double click and see if we can open it up. And again, where would you start? You might start here off of, if you want to do a little bit more of what we call a low fidelity process instead of more of an AI or automated process to help with some of these things like sitemaps and wireframes. You might instead come in here and start actually drawing your wireframes here instead. And we would just do really rough boxes like, hey, here's my hero image and this is going to happen here. Let me zoom in. I'm going to do a button right here and I'm going to do a big headline right here, maybe some body copy. Okay, that's great. And I want some testimonials. Maybe we'll do a couple of them on the page. So we could do this really low fidelity like this. And then from this low fidelity, we could move into something like FramePad and we could just immediately start kind of inserting stuff. So for instance, when we're here in FramePad, you can see all of the different elements. It already has typography set up for me. It has colors and we can just modify those later on, but it has things like different sections that we can use like nav bars, and you can see I can actually zoom in and see all the different nav bars. Maybe those will work for my project. So very similar to Reloom, except it's already in Framer website form. Here's a bunch of hero sections. I'm sure we can find one that looks really, really similar to the one that we've already selected inside of our wireframe. So let's look for one that has more of a center aligned image. I think maybe even, here it is. Zoom back in. Here's one that has a little bit more of a center aligned image. So we would just insert version hero vertical 1 into our project. And when I go back over here to pages, let's go to my home page, you can see I actually already have one inside. Now, again, what's the beauty of this? We can start inserting sections, for instance, like a metrics section. Sorry, let's go back here to home. And we want to, for instance, grab, let's do this. Assets, we'll jump over to assets and we can go into things like FAQs. And we like the look of that. So why don't we do accordion? We'll just drag this on to our stage and I'm just going to put this inside of my project. Everything is built using kind of stacks and auto layouts. And really, really quickly, we could just make a couple of changes here, tablet, phone, and make sure that we fill the space, and all of a sudden we have responsive things happening here. Okay, so same thing, we can go into like our pricing section. We don't have a pricing section, but you can imagine I'm just going to drag this into place and I'm going to set it to fill, and now for the most part everything becomes pretty responsive here. And the good news is if we have our website set up here, we can just publish it and we can send our client a staging link and we can say, hey, I'm already building your website. Why don't you come in and check out the progress that we've made here. Let me go back really quickly and just scroll up. Here we go. We have a website that's being built and you can see it's already responsive. So it's very helpful sometimes to build things in the medium or in the format in which they're ultimately going to be received, which is for us a website. So these are two slightly different paths, a bunch of tools to get you started. But what is foundational or pivotal here in this section, the structure section for you to understand, is that you have to build a sitemap, you have to build out a content document, you have to build out wireframes, and then however you would like to implement all of that to get your clients something to start looking at and approving the structure, you can take any path you want. But all of these techniques and methods can be very, very helpful for speeding that process up. So next, we're gonna actually take our design back inside of Figma, because that's the route we're gonna go on. And we're gonna start exploring some of the visual design, color, typography, layout, making some of those changes. And we should build out a pretty customized website, because we don't want to just ship templates. We want to customize and build it to actually match our client so that we're meeting their needs. So with that being said, we're going to move into the design structure, or the design process right now. Now it's time to get into the design work, which is the fun part. It's the part you've probably all been waiting for. Me too. It gets really, really exciting when all the strategy and structure is behind us and we get to start visualizing and being a little bit more creative. And this is where we're really going to start to add that layer of customization. So again, we're not starting everything from scratch. We didn't draw all of these wireframes, but we're definitely not taking a predefined template and just maybe changing the text inside and selling it. We, again, are going to be doing our customization work right now on our website. You can see we have our sitemap over here, and we have our wireframe over here, which we are going to be taking our wireframe, and in each of these sections, which are Reloom components, we're going to be taking them and then just detaching them from the instance. So now we have access to the design and we can be changing anything and everything inside. So I like to just take all of these and then just detach instance. And again, some of these are going to be really exported directly into Framer, and some of them we're going to design pieces and then we're going to use FramePad or Framer components and just work from there and style them backwards to match the design. But there is a process we'll talk about where after we're done designing, we get to just bring a lot of this stuff directly into Framer from our design. So we'll talk about development next, but for right now, before we get into any of this, we need to go into an exploration mode. Exploration mode is really for us to take all of that competitive set analysis and start to design some initial visual directions. Before we start designing the website, we might have various different ways that we want to work: color palettes, typography, imagery. So we're going to come up with a couple of different ways in which we're going to do this, or could do this website. And then we're going to create some messy mood boards and eventually what we'll call some style tiles. And that's really where we start. And a lot of this is just investigating the web a little bit. Here's a really bad tattoo website that my client brought up and said they really liked. But again, we don't just say, oh, okay, my client likes this, I need to make it like this. We have to ask those questions. What do you like about this? Why do you like this? And as I started to ask those questions, I noticed that it had very little to do with the way it looked. It had more to do with a couple of aesthetics. Really, he liked the fact that there was an About Me section here and a gallery you could find and a really big Book Now button that was very clear. He liked more of that dark vibe. But he said, you know, he wished that maybe it was like he could see it being a mixture of dark and light because maybe this looks a little bit too kind of tough guy. So he wanted maybe a little bit more of a balance. So I'm going to take comps like this. I'm going to start going to other sites like Dribbble, and I'm going to start looking for things like tattoo website, and we get a lot of different stuff happening here. So I'm just going to bring up a bunch of these. Like I'm just going to hold down my Command or Control button and just start opening up tabs and trying to find something that, you know, maybe sparks some interest, something that looks kind of interesting. Here's a lot of tattoo inspired stuff, something that's maybe a little bit more modern. That's kind of interesting. Okay, great. So we're doing a little bit of this, maybe something like this as well. Maybe I saw some kind of inspiration there. Let's go over to Behance as well and do some similar stuff. So here's a tattoo website. Here's a couple things that are looking kind of cool. I'm just opening up tabs in the background. You can see them all loading up here in the top of my browser bar. Custom design, got some dark colors with some maybe light kind of, you know, oranges or yellows kind of popping off of it. That looks like it could be kind of cool. And again, we're just looking for styles that might match what he is saying that he liked. So we're going to bring up a bunch of these, and now just comes the time where you're just going to start clipping things and building what we call a messy mood board. So I'm going to jump over to my tattoo design website. I'm going to create a new page here. I'm going to call this page mood board. And just like that, now we're working in this blank page, and you guessed it, I'm just going to bring my browser over because I have it in a separate tab here, and I'm just going to start really saving a lot of things. So actually I'm going to pull this over here so we have access to our desktop a little bit. Why don't we just start grabbing? And I don't even want to grab entire things. I just want to grab things that are kind of interesting to me. So I'm just screenshotting things like so. Is there anything else on here that was kind of cool? This is kind of interesting. I like this kind of 3-up. We have some plus and kind of expanding FAQ stuff down here. I feel like this relates. That's interesting. Let me see. We have kind of like an appointment booking thing. So I'm just grabbing stuff and a map inside the footer. I think that's probably kind of interesting and important. So I'm just snapping things. I don't like a lot about what's going on here, although I might say that I like some of the call to action or like the, alternating sections, but there's not a whole lot to like here. So I'm going to skip that one. I do like kind of these modern kind of like bit of typography that's working here. So and it's got a big logo. And actually, if we look back in our design file for our starter here, you can see that we actually have a bunch of starting assets from our client. I'm going to drag this over, a bunch of starting images, some of the jewelry he makes, and he has this really big, very like tattoo inspired logo. So I think this resonates well, like a really clear navigation up top, lots of imagery of the portfolio happening pretty quickly. But what I really like here is the kind of like the bright, powerful typography off of this dark background. There's good contrast and clarity there. So let's look at some stuff like this. Yeah, like, some of this is okay, but I don't love it. I feel like it looks a little bit old, just slapping some tattooed stuff. So I'm actually going to take a picture of this as an example of what not to do, because I don't want to do that, right? Although I do like kind of this larger section. So I'm going to put some X's and some check marks. That's a really, really big portfolio and hard to kind of like take in. I wonder if they have any other examples. This is kind of interesting for our shop. Okay, so we're going to take a picture of that. What else do we got? Let's keep cruising through. Again, we're kind of staying away from stuff like this, although we do have a pretty clear call to action here. So I might just remember that that's what's interesting to me about this one. Anything else? Not a whole lot of other things are interesting to me. This feels very messy to me. I don't like it. Got some tattoo inspired artwork there, kind of cool. But this one is actually kind of interesting. I like the background words, like these outlined kind of background words there. So why don't I just clip that, because that's kind of interesting to me. And it's so much of what we've been taking a look at. It's really tattoo inspired, and there is like some Polynesian stuff because he's in Hawaii that we probably want to get in there. But also we don't want it to be unmodern. We don't want it to be like so tattoo or so Polynesian that it doesn't kind of fall in line with satisfying his clients. Because although I'm making this for my client, ultimately I'm making it for his clients, and his clients are not tattoo artists that live in Hawaii. They are the average person vacationing to Hawaii. So they might want something a little bit more on the modern and simple side. So I'm kind of keeping that in mind when I think about sections like this. Like, again, do I love this? No, as an entire layout, but it is a little bit on that simple and modern side of things. So not really much to take a picture of here, but just to keep in mind, like really maybe I will take a picture because it is kind of a modern palette, and it also has big, bold kind of lettering and typography happening inside of here. So I like this big, bold typography, snapping images of like moving things. Again, like I kind of like this. I kind of don't. I'll tell you what I don't like about it is I don't like how everything just looks disjointed, but I do like some of this warm color. I think I'm starting, as I'm looking at it, starting to kind of settle on warmer colors, maybe being used as call to actions. I feel like that pops, because here's what we had over here was like a cool color on blue. It doesn't pop very much, and I want things to be very, very noticeable. So again, like really modern stuff maybe. No, not so much there. Again, there's some of those warmer tones we're talking about. I don't love the just giant text sitting on top of imagery, but I do like some of this warm on dark. I think it's really, really interesting. The amount of screenshots we're taking feels like madness. This is kind of interesting too. There's a little bit of grit and grain or hand-drawn kind of elements inside of that. I kind of like that. Don't like that. We could head over to Mobbin, but we're not going to find a whole lot. Okay, so next step is why don't we actually bring all of those in? So I'm going to hide my browser. And why don't I drag this across? I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm just going to grab all of this, go over to my mood board here, and why don't we draw a frame and just bring all of these in to our project. And it's just going to be a data dump, a massive dump of stuff. And sure, why don't we actually just grab all of them, Command or Control S, and put it inside of a section. We don't need a frame. We have a real messy mood board, right? So with that being said, now like we could maybe sort these into different messy mood boards, because we're probably looking for maybe 2 different directions. I have an idea of where we're going to go, but I don't want to have so many different directions and ideas that they feel really, really disjointed from one another. I want them to be fairly similar, right? So I might actually, in this case, just go with one direction and start pointing out what I like and don't like. And I'm going to make this even messier, actually. I'm going to grab this whole section. I'm going to come into my FigJam file, and I'm just going to paste it over here, and all of those images are going to follow me. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just circling and highlighting the things that I like. So let's start out with a pencil down here, and we'll go to green, make sure it's like in the big size. I'm just going to start circling the things that I like and don't like. Like I really like these like hand-drawn images, and I really like this big bold typography. Let's see, I like the warm there. Again, I like the warmth here, and we can kind of talk about this more later. What do I like here? I like some of this kind of grittiness in here, or texture being included, and I really like this layout. So we're just going to go through and start highlighting things that we like, and we'll come back and do the things that we don't like. Therefore, we can have a nice conversation. I like the map, and I like this typography, and I like actually how you can see the logo there. I like the whole thing because it's very, very clean. Just the layout, like having that text over there in white and a nice big image of some sort. Let's say I don't like that, but again, I do like some of this warmth. I feel like we could probably improve upon that button. Love these FAQs. I think they're going to be important, and a contact form, we're going to have one of those as well. And again, the warmth, we're really dialing in on some things we like, and some other things now I'm going to mark in red that I don't like. I don't like this all sitting on top of an image, so we're not going to do that. I don't like, you know, the image being right there necessarily in the top, but more than anything, I don't like the contrast there that's happening. Again, same thing, like bad contrast between that blue or that gold and that green. Not a big fan. You know, I think that we want things to be fairly simple. Again, I just don't like this whole thing, and I'll explain to my client why. I feel like there's too many images here. We want to focus on them. I don't think he's going to need a lot of interaction, like expanding things to see a light box. Most people are viewing things mobile, so I just want it to look like a really dialed in Instagram feed. I feel like that's going to be way more modern. I don't like any of this layout. And is there anything I don't like that I can point to and speak to? Now, that probably works for me for right now. So with that being said, I have what I would call a messy mood board, and I would definitely, if I was not pressed for time, come in here and start to write some text on these, on the things that I like and don't like. And I can make these large and fit the right color. And I would say, you know, image background or whatever, and put like bad contrast. Like I don't like that. So I would mark each and every one of these, what I like, what I don't like about it. But with this being said, I actually have some direction. I know that I'm leaning towards a darker website, probably with some light sections to keep it modern and clean. So now I'm looking for color palettes and typography that match. These color palettes should be warm, should pop off of like black and white really, really well. And the typography, I'm going to want to have probably a variance. Like I want to have one, I'm going to keep it really simple and modern, a sans serif font that has lots of weights that reaches up to a nice, really kind of like powerful, modern, kind of bold or thick style. So I'm looking for some color and some typography, and eventually some imagery. So why don't we go back over to the web, and we'll start looking for some of those items. And immediately I'm going to jump over to typography. I'm just going to go to Google Fonts, and I'm going to start looking for some typography that we really, really like. Like I want sans serif there. What else do we want? Number of styles. I like to have at least 7 or 8 styles to kind of choose from. So that's nice. And I wouldn't mind getting some stuff that's a little bit more, you know, like on the chunky side of stuff. So we have sans serif. Display fonts, no, we don't want to mark that. Let's just go with that. Let's see how it looks like. And we'll just kind of typeset a bunch of things, like it'll say Hawaii tattoos here. And we can just start looking through a bunch of these, right? So I have a couple in my mind, and I want to sort them by name. You know, like we're looking for, and I wonder, let's just cheat it really quickly and uppercase everything and see what that looks like. Okay, cool. So we have some things that are alumni. That's kind of interesting. That's not quite as bold as I was looking for. That's kind of interesting. That might be a little too tall, a little too much, a little too tough, because we want it to be cool, but we want it to be maybe not so tall. So I'm going to look through here and just find a couple of fonts. I'm going to press down Command and find some ones that I like. And then, I don't know, we'll see if we can go with some of them. You know what I mean? Let's go like this. And I'm going to close these filters. I don't need them anymore. Actually, why don't I look at this like in a dark format? I'm just going to flip the switch to the dark theme so that I can kind of see what they would look like between light and dark. Those are kind of interesting. I think that we'll just pull a couple of these that look kind of good. And so we'll do Geologica is kind of a good one. It has some styles in there that are really, really good. Some of those thicker ones. And maybe we'll do something. I don't want anything with any sort of like curvature or anything. I want to be really, really more on the modern side. So we'll grab one or two more here, like maybe Mukta. Mulish is always a good one to try. I like that in websites. And then Noto Sans. But let's do just normal Noto Sans, and we'll start there. Okay, so I got a couple of these, and I can start to look down at the weights, and I'm looking for like the really bold weight there. That looks kind of cool. Jump down to some of the bolder weights here. That could be cool as well. We might do, I'm really liking this one, the Geologica. But we'll download a couple of these, and we'll make sure that we play with those. I'm also think I have a font in my head that I think might work, but a lot of these I think are really kind of cool. They're not too sporty, too Nike-ish, but they are bold. They pop, especially dark on light, light on dark. I feel like they look pretty good. So I'm going to grab a couple of those, and I'm going to move on to color palettes. And let's see what we can find in color palettes. But first, I'm looking for a font that I might actually have on my system. You may not have, but yeah, we won't do it. We'll just stick with what we can find on Google Fonts for now. Let's jump over to a tool like Coolers, and we could start, you know, maybe like looking or building our own color palettes, but there's a lot of really beautiful color palettes that have already been built here. So I'm going to do something like warm. I'm looking for something that just kind of pops. I want to have some black in it. It's telling me I got to sign up for a pro account. Let's look for orange, actually, and maybe we could just find one that has like some black tones that go with it. And I think we'll stay fairly monochromatic here because, again, we want it to be fairly simple. This looks kind of cool. Okay, yeah, we might open this palette. And again, I'm just hitting the three dots in the corner, and then we can kind of see a bunch of the options here. So I just said open palette, but we can also, you know, like we can visualize the colors. We could do something like that, and it'll bring up a little bit of a palette visualizer. So this is kind of cool. I can kind of see this palette playing out in some designs. So I kind of dig in this palette. We might work on it a little bit. And again, this for me is the start of exploration. I might stick with some of these palettes. I might modify them and kind of like tweak and change them as I get them into the design and start to see my needs a little bit, right? So let's go back and find one or two others. I think this one looks kind of interesting. This one has just good scale. I could probably slap white and black on top of this, and that would probably work. So why don't we open that palette and also visualize those colors as well. So that palette, we got that darker one, pretty simple. Actually, I think I'm just really digging this one. It's really, really simple. Although this one, I feel like might work a little bit better in the light stuff. I feel like we'll go with this one. And honestly, this is all I'm going to do. Let's say I kind of like this palette. I'm going to use this as the starting point. I'm just going to snap an image of it, and you guessed it, I'm going to bring it into my project. So let's find our color palette, bring that in there like so, and I'm going to make it a little bit warmer, something like this. This is a messy mood board. That's all this is. And then I've downloaded a couple of those fonts. So let's just go back and find the ones that we really, really liked here. And actually what we could do is we could just snap some images of these as well. So let's go down here and maybe just snap a couple of images like this. Again, very, very messy. Not the ultimate way to present or do anything, but we're just getting that messiness down. We're going to refine these quite a bit. And let's get, I like to maybe even get some of this typography in here. A lot can happen through just messy snaps and pictures. Get that like so. That's looking pretty cool. Noto Sans, let's go down. I really like Noto Sans. I think that one is looking pretty cool. bring a couple of those in. I think I missed dropping down and getting a full typeset of one of them, which was this one. This was Geologica, which we really, really like. So I'm going to grab that section as well, just like that. Cool. I'm going to drag this out of the way. Let's look for our screenshots here. Got a couple of those. Yeah, let's just take a couple of those and bring those in. And we're starting to get a little bit of a visual direction here. So super interesting stuff. Okay, great. Now we've built a little bit of a messy mood board. I'm going to introduce you to kind of the next step here, which would be taking this messy mood board, and you can use this messy mood board if you want to for conversations, but I would prefer to actually have something that's a little bit more dialed in, a little bit more structured, and not just a structured mood board, but something that I like to call a style tile. And a style tile is really, you've taken the mood board, you've taken that messiness, like we've moved from something like this, just grabbing shots and images and ideas. And you might have, experimented with building something that's like a structured mood board where we start to vet out and figure out the things we love from that messy mood board and structure them a little bit more. I like to take it one step further and actually design something I call a style tile. This is not like you're actually designing the website, but you're designing almost like a little mini mock version. It's not the final, doesn't have to be exactly how it looks, but it starts to put into place some of the kind of like look and feel of the site. You can visualize it a little bit more. Like we have fake navigations and some icons being used and some buttons. And honestly, for me, this is where I fast forward the process. I just go really, really messy. And then I grab a pre-established style tile like this one, and I bring it into my project. So now we have this messy mood board here. And then I will just come over here and paste in my style tile, and I'll start working from there. And obviously we would have wanted to have all of these pieces of typography in here as well. But let's just work off of this. I'll bring my style tile actually over on the other side. And why don't we just start doing a little bit of that work? Where was the color palette that we had? I'm going to bring that in. Great. Now we can start dialing in and customizing and making things look a little bit more like a website. Now, I'll be honest, I don't love, they're not perfect, the colors, but we're going to work off of them and see how we can get there. What's really cool in Figma is I can actually just come down here and I can see all the colors that I'm using in this style tile, and I can just start replacing them actually, which is kind of fun. So I can grab, for instance, like this green, I can target it and say, hey, where's that green being used? Instead, I just want to use like pure black there. And let me see, what else do we have when I click this entire style tile? We're using another version of green that's happening in that part of the color palette. I'm going to grab that and I'm going to target like this lighter black, like kind of this off black color, already kind of looking a little bit closer. Let's grab our yellow and replace it with orange. Okay, pretty good, pretty cool. And that's replaced a lot of our stuff here. And then what we can do is grab all of this text, and it's using Roboto, but I think we were using something like Noto Sans in here. And we can just come in and look at that. We're already starting to kind of work on things. So let's do something like extra bold, and we'll pump that up to all caps to see what that looks like. And we can say, get a tattoo at hawaiitattoo.com, something like that. Why don't we just shrink the size down? Okay, cool. And then we have a bunch of lorem ipsum sitting in there. And, we have this dark color over here. Maybe we'll use that as our secondary orange. So let me just grab that secondary orange real quick. Looks pretty cool to me. I think the next thing we have to do is let's just zoom out. Let's go back to our starter and let's grab a couple of these elements that we had from our client. Maybe the jewelry, maybe the images, maybe some of these shapes. Add some Polynesian shapes kind of hiding in there. Come back over to the mood board, kind of give it some distance from our messy mood board and look at it alone because it's looking kind of good. Paste all those items in and let's figure it out. Let's bring these in, okay? And obviously we're gonna want to grab the fill off of some of these images. I'll keep them exactly where they're at. I'll just replace the image fill like that. That's not a very good one. Let's go back over to starter. Do we have something that works a little bit more? I think this one would work a little bit more. I'm gonna just copy that fill, head back over to mood board, and heck, I might just throw that in there like there. I might move this up just a little bit and make some space. That looks pretty cool. And again, let's grab everything in here and just move this to something like Noto Sans, right? So Noto Sans. We're just kind of realigning things. That looks pretty cool. I think our stuff inside didn't get changed. Let's go Noto Sans there. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I don't know, this is like a little card element I had for like a different project, but it's fun to visualize UI elements also. So we'll also grab Noto Sans, just slap that in there. You know, really, really simple stuff. Let's grab our buttons over here and change those as well. Boom, just like that. Everything here now is Noto Sans. Okay, great. So why don't we grab our logo here, and I'm just going to cut that and come right here and paste it, shrink it down, get it on the page. It feels a little bit like a nav bar here, maybe just a tad bit. And I'll probably shrink the size of this text so we don't have to see quite as much of it. I'm just designing like a little kind of like fake layout here, having a little bit of fun. Let's bring this Polynesian kind of texture in here. And why don't we bring the opacity of it way down, and I'm actually going to grab it and put it behind everything else so stuff can kind of pop off. Yeah, something like that. And we'll move our icons up. It's looking very, very inspired by the brand, I think. Let's get rid of those images. I think I had like another image sitting over here, and that was like another Polynesian, like a really light Polynesian texture. Kind of putting that up at the top. Maybe we put that up at the top here and bring this into our other side over here. Let's make it white. There we go. Take our style tile. Let's just make sure it's inside of here. We're just cutting it and pasting it. Look at that. Now we have like some kind of tattoo or Polynesian inspired stuff happening on the top and the bottom. I'll just bring it down. Is there anything else we're missing? Yeah, probably an image of the jewelry that he sells. So let's bring this down, and I'm just going to crop and bring the size of the image up so you can see it. We'll just pop that little image right in there. And you know what? We might bring this down here. And again, we're just kind of doctoring elements and making it seem like it's all connected. Not saying by any means that this is the way that we're going to lay out the cards or anything for our shop items, but this is where I am just customizing, letting my creativity flow, kind of bringing down some of those textures. And now this feels like, to me, something I could present to my client and say, hey client, I did a bunch of research and exploration, and I found a visual direction that I think really, really works. And this is where we can sell our visual direction and our design rationale. And this gives him a pretty good idea on where it's going to go. Is it the end all be all? No, it's absolutely not. But if I need stuff like, you know, if I need him just to get a glimpse of what I'm imagining the website might kind of look like, I think this does kind of a decent job. And if you want to, you can create one of these, two of these, three of these, however many visual directions that you want. But then comes the time where, you know, you present and you get buy-in, right? You get buy-in from your client. So with that being said, I think that we are looking pretty good here. I just want to walk through something, another asset that might be helpful to you if you are struggling with visual assets, because I happen to have visual assets provided by my client for me or for the project, but maybe you don't have any of that and you need some. I definitely recommend using Midjourney. Midjourney's newest version doesn't actually have to happen inside of Discord. So they actually allow you to imagine things directly within the app, which is kind of cool. So I might write something like Polynesian tattoo on tan arm of a tattoo client. I don't know. Let's see. It's submitted, and we can start to run and generate ideas here. We can come over and you can see 15-18% completed. It is working right now, and we can do lots of these, but this is how Midjourney works. Midjourney will kind of store your prompt, and then we can actually rerun that prompt and get different AI generated imagery. And you can see, look, it's already starting to come in, right? It took my natural language prompt. We used to have to use weird keywords like tattoo, 4K, photorealism. We don't have to do that now. Midjourney is, in my opinion, probably the best image generating tool on the market, because look at these realistic results we got, right? Again, here's what we're looking for. Polynesian tattoo on tan arm of a tattoo client. This looks really, really good. So let's say my client didn't have good images or didn't have any good photography to use across the site. This is a great way to start. And you can do this for anything and everything. You can see I've researched like logo types and different backgrounds, and I've done, letters and logo marks. I actually use these images for a client project. Check out this one. It was a young hip music producer in a synthwave neon style working on a desktop, and these are the cool images that I got. So you can generate really cool images here, and if you really, really like it, for instance, I can bring this up and I can start to give it some instructions like, hey, maybe I want to vary it a little bit, more subtle, more strong, upscale it, be a little bit creative. Sure, all I really want to do is just subtly upscale this, but really for now, I can enlarge this and I could drag this onto my desktop and check out this image that I have to use. It looks just as beautiful, just as good. I could take this fill, and this is not my client's work, but it could be. Like, what if I just pasted that right in there, and now I have imagery that I've never had before? And again, that's using Midjourney, either the new version or the old Discord version, to generate those assets. Now the time would come to present this work, get sign off and approval like we've talked about, and then move into high fidelity design, which we're going to do right now. All right, I'm back here with my design file, and I just spent all that time creating my mood board. I'm actually just going to copy this really quickly, and I'm going to paste it in over here. This file has my general visual direction. It has my layouts via my wireframes that we're about to modify, customize, and really dial in and make sure that we're stylizing things correctly. And then I have a bunch of those assets and things. And again, I have my sitemap over here. I'll just move that out of the way. We're probably not going to use that. Now, when I brought in things from Reloom, I actually got a bunch of Reloom components. And there's a bunch of different ways you can go about this process. I'll leave that up to you. You could modify all the components, work within the components. But honestly, I just like to detach the instances of all those components like I've done on both the desktop and the mobile view. And I'm really just going to dial in and focus on, on working on these detached from that instance. Okay, so not working at a component level, but one of the things I do want to do is all of these are inside of an auto layout here inside of Figma, and all of my different sections are auto layouts as well. And you can see as I start to actually like grab an element, it is fairly responsive, like to a certain extent, right? So there is some responsiveness happening here, but when I grab the entire thing, it's not responsive. That's because it's nested in a parent frame. So I'm just going to grab all of these really quickly, and I'm going to move it away from being fixed, and I'm just going to have them all fill the container. And look at that. Instantly, I have a fairly responsive view. I can start to stretch and ebb and flow. Now, I know that we're going to move things over to Framer for our no-code development section. And I know I'm pretty sure, anyways, that the standard size is about 1,200 pixels to be designing on for your desktop mode or desktop view. So I'm just going to set this to 1,200 pixels, and that's perfect. Now we have the beginning of our kind of like desktop view. Now, there will be responsive stuff that we'll do, but we could do all these designs in Figma responsively, but we could also just design all of this and then really quickly get it into Framer, and Framer will handle all of that responsive stuff. What we'll do is design desktop, identify any responsive switches, changes, or issues, and then bring all of that information with us into Framer. So we're really just going to focus on the desktop view here for now. Okay, so we have our layout here. The first thing we're going to do is we are currently using whatever came from Reloom as the styles. When we brought those styles over from Reloom, it brought all of these type styles as well, which are great, and we may use those. But I just want to make a switch really quickly, because if I drill down on them, you can see that they're using like Roboto, and I don't want to do these like individual one by one. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a plugin, and I think it's called Batch Styler. There it is right there. I'm going to grab Batch Styler, and you can see it shows me all of my text. I can grab every single text link that's been provided, and I'm just going to switch this over really quickly to Noto Sans. Let's Noto Sans. There it is. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. I could probably just keep typing. and find that. There it is, Noto Sans, like that. It's grabbing all of those weights, all of the sizes, everything, and we're just going to update the styles. And we should see everything update instantly like that on the page. So we have a bunch of colors, but there's no colors really used over from Reloom yet, so no problem. We could create those color styles really quickly, but let's start actually just applying them into our design. So the first thing we know is we're going to have a button. That button is going to be orange. I have some plans for this button. I want to make it really stand out, but why don't we just zoom in on that? And I think we have a sub headline here. We had another one, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. I'm going to move it up above, and we have our content document here that we pulled from ChatGPT, and you can see there's a bunch of content. So here's our hero section and all the content that's going to sit inside of it. And you can see I have kind of like a main headline here, and then I have, whoa, watch out now. And I usually put in brackets the things that are going to be buttons. And I would probably even link these if I was doing this, you know, and wanting to show this content document to my client. I would link all the CTAs, the buttons, or the links so that, you know, they know exactly where those are going to lead. So this one says taking appointments. So why don't we just pop that in there? And we don't need it to be bold, I don't think. And then this one, I think just said Josh Flynn, and which is his name. And then we have a line that goes down below. So let's do something like Josh Flynn, like that. We'll pop the text in there. And I think we only had one button because we have a singular call to action. Because remember, that is solving the problem. All we want people to do is book. We don't want them to learn more. We just want them to book, right? So there might, you know, be a place for a secondary call to action. But for us right now, it's all we're going to do. Okay, cool. Why don't we start by actually looking at this element here, and somehow Reloom's also brought in components. So why don't we just really quickly, I'm just going to change this because we have a bunch of colors it looks like it did bring in. We're going to need to break that color, and let's find our color of choice here. I believe it's this orangish kind of color, and let's just zoom out so we can actually see things. There we go. There's our orange color. Great, fantastic. Why don't we just really quickly turn that into a style? So we will just hit here, hit the plus, and we'll call this not primitive semantic. We got a bunch of variables and styles that have been created. And if you don't want those, you could do away with them. We'll just ignore them for now. So we'll just call this primary, and we'll even put CTA there and create that style. We have a secondary one here, so let's just do that one really quickly. Style. And we'll go primary light, this. And okay, so we got some colors in there, and I'm pretty sure we have black and white, so we'll probably be fine there. Let's zoom in, re-grab this component, switch the fill to be, here we go, our primary CTA. And what's our call to action? It's going to be book a free consult. So why don't we say book a free consult, something like that, and let's not capitalize that. Let's take the border off of this guy, and yeah, we don't need a stroke for now. And I think let's try rounding the edges and doing more like a pill-like button. I'm just going to put 360 up here in my border radius. And okay, cool. So far, so good. It's still using Roboto there for some reason. So let's just do this. Let's detach this instance and let's create our own button. And you know what I'm going to do instead? I'm going to actually just go back and detach this. And instead of doing a solid fill, why don't we actually do a fill like this? And we'll grab that lighter color. Where is that lighter color? Okay, great. I'm going to do lighter color there. And this is really dark. It's not even our brand color. So let's grab that. There we go. That looks pretty good. Looks like we got it in there. We're going to do something a little bit more exciting, I think. Why don't we bring up our gradient there and bring that down. And then I'm going to switch this to, let's see, we have our H1, H2. We should have some text medium, bold, 18 pixels. That's a bit large, but we can go with text alternate and text regular. I think 16 is probably better. Like, let's do 16 there. Something like that. And then why don't we really quickly just, I'm going to retype that and say book a free consult. Let's do that in uppercase. And we have this button, but the whole thing is there's like a little bit of space there. So I'm just going to pull that out, get rid of whatever that other little space is there, and just rename this button like that. Good. And then let's do, I don't know, let's play a little bit really quickly. So let's do an outside stroke like that. And let's grab our color here. Let's do light, and we'll even actually kind of break that light color. Why don't we bring the opacity down? So it's kind of like this little bit of a glow on the button. That could be kind of cool. All right, and that looks like, hey, maybe that's the button, our button component. So why don't we turn that into a component? We've done so. Perfect. And now what we need is an image. Why don't I zoom out, and I'm going to grab something like this image. I'll just find the fill and just paste that inside. I think we're going to just shrink the size down a little bit. And we have rounded buttons. Why don't we round the corners a little bit? We're just starting to slowly but surely come up with a little bit of a style. And I think the style here was a little bit on the rigid side, a little bit on the square side. I'd rather do something a little bit more kind of like soft and welcoming and inviting. So I'm just going to bring the space down here, and we got content there, and we have the button. Why don't we just put that inside of the button, and we don't need this necessarily. So we just have this one area. We can change the spacing for all of it, and our button just got flipped around. So let's put it like that. So let's increase the spacing again a little bit. Okay, now this is where we're going to find, you know, we're going to get to play a little bit more. But first, we'll come back and we'll play with all the type styles, the sizing. We'll get really, really interesting here. But let's get some content on the page and figure out how we all want it to, or how we want it all to kind of like play out. So this whole section has our white primary background. That's cool. And let's just start to do some of that flip-flop. Let's add a dark section here. So I'll come in and kind of up here, color neutrals. Let's just go black there. And I'm just going to drag a version of this over so I can see the content that's there. But yeah, I definitely want my section, my reviews to be in black. Why don't we do this? Why don't we make them the error state really quickly, and then we can grab all of the selection colors in there. We could flip them to white really quickly. So just flip everything in there to white and white like that, and then we can take that text error and come back up and just go to black. Okay, so we just kind of inverted everything inside of there, and I don't necessarily love this. And this is where we start kind of thinking about creating individual components, right? I want to have multiple of these on screen, multiple of these reviews on screen, but I don't love the way that these are currently set up. So let's do a little bit of work here. We want to read, since there's going to be multiple, we want to read these. I want to read them probably a little bit more like cards, I think. So why don't we fill this section with like a kind of almost darker, kind of like neutral, kind of gray color. And let's give it some padding on the left and right. It's got a fixed size. Why don't we hug the contents? There we go. That feels kind of good. And I don't think he has all this information. I don't think we need the extra logos. I think that we can get rid of the divider, that we don't need that. These are Yelp reviews, and not all of them come with an avatar, and a lot of times they don't even come with like a name or anything like that. So there we go. We're doing something like that. Let's left align everything. Take our text, left align it. Pretty cool. So yeah, we'll just come back over to our content document, and here it is. We have like a review from Angela C. So we'll just grab that really quickly, pop that in, and just put Angela C. Great. And let's make this kind of interesting, shall we? We could, I think, probably grab these and fill them with our primary CTA. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Grab the individual vectors or the stars themselves, give them that size, or give them that style there. And this is like very, very big. This is like an H5. I don't think I need it to be an H5. So, and notice they have like desktop and mobile styles here. And I don't actually need that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to depend on the desktop styles, and I'm going to let Framer do all the mobile resizing stuff for me. So why don't I just grab these really quickly and delete, and I'll let these kind of stay. I'm going to grab all of those and just move those out of that subcategory. Don't need them, just headings, text, so many different styles. We probably don't need all the styles. Why don't we just grab these as well, delete those, and see, delete those as well. And then we just have a bunch of text styles that are like around 16. Oh, I see why they did that. So Okay, interesting. We'll keep those for now. And it's always interesting to see like how Reloom and these different tools kind of give you stuff. So I probably won't use the tiny, so I'll get those out. But why don't we come in here real quick and just put those in kind of like a text medium, maybe? Like, doesn't need to be so large. Absolutely not. Okay, so now we have a review. Let's give it a little bit more padding around the left and the right hand side and the top and the bottom. We're 32 pixels all around. That feels like a pretty good review card. We could stretch this out and change the width a little bit more if we wanted to manually change it, but I like that. So why don't we turn that into a component? You have the testimonial section, and then we are going to actually call this thing the testimonial box. Testimonial box. You don't have to rename these layers if you don't want to. There we go. Turned it into a component. And then I'm just going to duplicate these, I think. They're inside of an auto layout. I'm going to grab all of them. And the entire section is an auto layout. So we can just change direction in which the auto layout is moving. And we can mess with the gaps or the spacing. So now I can see that there's multiple. And maybe we'll even have these kind of rotate or automatically move. Or maybe we'll put some controls to slide through. But I think it would be nice to have them kind of automatically move a little bit. So pretty cool. I'm liking that. This text is going to need to be way bigger. So this is where we might want to go do a little bit of a typographic scale like experiment here. So, I mean, I definitely want my H1. There's not going to be many H1s. So I'm just going to cheat this right now and make this way, way bigger. And then I'm going to go into the details and just capitalize everything. And I think it is set to bold. Why don't we make it like even bolder, like black or something like that. And the character spacing seems to be like really, really interesting. I'm not sure that I love the character spacing. So why don't we come in and just kind of change our character spacing that's in percentage, just tighten it up a little bit. And I'm starting to look at the Noto Sans and not really love it a whole bunch, but we'll stick with it for now. Okay, so we have kind of this top section. I'm feeling like there's a lot of extra space. This is the padding on the top and bottom. We have 64 on the sides. I don't think we need this much top and bottom space, so let's just bring that in. And I can see why there was kind of like some segmentation or some, you know, some changes to the spacing or the grouping, excuse me, for like all these little elements. Like maybe I want like a slight little amount of space here, so I might put those all in an auto layout and decrease the space in between those, and then increase the space between that and the button, just making a little bit more space. And again, I'm starting to play with the sizes here, and this is where we're gonna like customize. Like I kind of want like a big, bold kind of headline here. So that looks pretty good. I like that so far. Let's grab our navigation here, and I'm pretty sure we have a logo element. I'm just gonna shrink that down because I can tell it's already too big. We're gonna come in here and just paste it, and let's resize again a little bit, something like that. Cutting and just pasting it in. Let's grab this and remove the stroke and let it kind of free flow. And then I have a button here. I'm just gonna get rid of these two buttons. I don't need those. I'm gonna instead just Command Shift R to paste to replace and pop that in. And then I think we had for our page structure, we just have our home page, and then we have About Me, Gallery, Contact. That's it. So let's just do 3 links right here, and we'll just change these. So it'll be About, and let's do Gallery and Contact. No need for any sort of complex drop downs for this one, but you can leave them if you want. That's pretty cool. And in our design, we had this like real subtle kind of like Polynesian thing happening back there. So let's go find that asset. I just copied it. I'm going to come into this entire hero element. I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to absolutely position it. And then I'm going to take the Y and just put 0. So it kind of shoots it all the way up at the top. Now, where do I want to put this? Maybe up here, and I'll remove the background, this, and then add the background from that navigation. And instead, I want to add that neutral background, whatever color that is. Let's find it. I think it's just white, to the entire thing. And then we have our frame here, our auto layout. Let's just make it so the content doesn't clip. We don't want that. And oh, look at that. It is kind of like going above. So, I mean, we can have it kind of lead up into it a little bit, but I guess we could just keep the clipping on. There's no need to really take that off. But okay, cool. So we have this Polynesian kind of element. We could play with that and just kind of move it around. And this is where like you can do a little bit of that fun kind of dragging and dropping stuff that's happening there. I think that that looks pretty good. I think I might have a better image. I'm going to open up some of my images of this project and just find some of them. Now, I've already taken a lot of these images and I have shrunk them down to be a little bit more accessible, and converted them from JPEGs to like WebP images or AVIF format. That's going to be a little bit better. So let's find a better image here and just drag that there and move this one above. And let's see how it does if I just grab and move above. That's interesting. Okay, I kind of like seeing him there a little bit more. So why don't we, instead of filling, why don't we crop? Kind of crop that way. And then why don't we bring down the size of this image. So let's go crop here. Just do like a little bit more of that image. A little bit more 1920 by 1080 kind of dimension there. That feels pretty good. Okay, I like what we're doing. We might, you know, make the logo just a little bit bigger and make sure that everything's staying centered there. But so far, if we take our website, it's looking pretty responsive. It's not very adaptive though at this point. So we can take the image and let's just try now filling again. It's always kind of filling to the top. So we're just going to keep it cropped like that. That's okay. And we have our review section. This is a little bit on the boring side. And I think we found in some of our, something I kind of missed was in one of our influences, there was like this cool like outlined text somewhere. Maybe we brought that over here. Some of the things that we did love was this warm text, like nice bold text. Ah, here it was, like kind of this cool kind of outlined effect. So let's see if we could bring some of that in to our file right now. I think the dark section down here might be a good place to start. So I'm going to grab the text down here, and why don't I just put something like, bring it down here. I'm just going to work off canvas, and I'm going to break this and just bring it in tight. And this could say something like reviews, but let's give it a stroke, remove the fill, and make it a white stroke, something like that. That's kind of cool. We don't need this old section over here. That was just for a reference. And let's take that and we'll come into our section, absolutely position it, X of 0, Y of 0, kind of move it up to the top. Now, where do we want to put it? I think it's really, really bright right now. I don't want this to like stand out too much. So I'm just going to move it down and maybe even kind of tuck it behind. Like, that's kind of cool. Have it kind of peeking. We're kind of coming up with like a little bit of a style here, like something that's kind of interesting that we may just want to repeat throughout the rest of the site. So let's make it like nice and big here. And maybe it even goes like up under like all the cards. And maybe it needs to have something a little bit more interesting about it as well. Like the stroke is this color. Why don't we turn it into a gradient, and we'll make this gradient color white, but we will fade out the opacity to 0. So it looks like it's kind of fading. Let's bring that gradient back up and make it fade out a little bit quicker. I want it to be legible, but it feels like it's almost glowing up from the bottom. Let me just zoom in, see if you can kind of see it and get your kind of take on it. I kind of like it. I think it's kind of interesting. So that's pretty cool. Okay, we have kind of a style here, and in our white areas, it looks like we have some like a little bit of a Polynesian kind of background. Why don't we see if we could play with getting another Polynesian background in here? Again, absolutely position it. Let's turn this to black. And interesting. Okay, why don't we do another thing on here where we will do a fade. So I'm just going to grab my gradient tool, and let's go from white to white, 0 to 100 white, and we should get some sort of fading effect there. And let's bring the opacity of the gradient all the way up. Good. Okay, so gradient again. Why don't we fade into the content this time so it's not very distracting? I'll bring our gradient up that way and maybe fade it out like that. Now let's take our entire, that shape is like sitting on top of stuff. So let's make sure it's like at the back of our stack. And then this is going to be our H2. It could be an H3. Let's make it an H2. And then let's change the style. That's 140. So we could actually go open up, because I think I'm wanting like much bigger kind of like type scales here. So why don't I open up something like typescale.com, and that's going to help us a little bit. So body size of 16 here, and we can scale up much faster, and that's going to get our, if you look at it and open up this whole thing, that's going to get our H1 in, and we're counting this in rems right now. Let's look at it in pixel form, about 182, so we can maybe scale a little less fast. That's kind of good. I kind of like the blockiness of Enter as I'm looking at it. There's some characters inside of Noto that I'm not really the biggest fan of. I think this is maybe a little bit more modern, so we might go back and try Enter and just switch things over. But I think this is kind of interesting. So I'm just going to grab this and take a screenshot of it, and I might bring that in. There's probably a fancy way to bring it in, but this way works for me. So I'm just going to grab that screenshot, and I might use that to kind of build my type scales here. So let me just bring this in. It's good because we don't want things to be like really, really bad and like flying all over the place in our type sizes. So let's grab this text, move it over here. Okay, and what are we saying here? We're saying that our H1 is going to be about, and I like to round just to like normal numbers, so about 127 or 128. Let's come to H1 and let's make it 128. It's actually pretty close to what we were looking for, okay? And then H2, we'll grab this one now and apply, duplicate it down and get H2. That one's going to be at 90. So why don't we go in and edit that one really quickly, and we'll do something like 90, so it's nice and big. Good, there's our H2, but it was pretty bold as well, and that's the problem. I think we're like leaving behind some of that bold style. We need to go up to like extra bold, and I think we need to capitalize again. Why don't we just keep that style happening as we kind of scale down. H3s can be 64, so let's go and turn this into an H3 and edit that H3 to be about 64 pixels. Again, let's capitalize that one. That'll be the last one that we capitalize. And let's change it from bold to that extra bold. Okay, so now when we did that, we should have changed them on the page as well. So you can see if this one's using the H2, it's quite big. And I think all this one says is something like, why hire Josh? Okay, and that looks pretty good. I like what's happening here. And H2, let's move that to an H3. Pretty good, pretty good. Okay, cool. Now the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring styles back up, that batch styler, and I'm gonna take all of my text styles again and move those from Noto. Let's do, like, what does it look like if we go to Enter and update the styles? It's just a lot blockier. It's a lot more modern and clean, kind of like what we were looking at for our kind of big modern typography. It doesn't have any like loose little characters. So I didn't really like that Noto Sans. I think that what we have with Enter is maybe just a little bit more clean and modern. So I like that quite a bit. This is looking pretty good. And I'm just gonna come in and lighten, gonna bring that up a little bit more. And maybe what I need to do is just bring the whole thing down. Just that little bit of opacity for my color down here. So I'm just bringing that down to 5 and kind of switching things. I want it to be subtle, but I don't want it to be hidden. You know what I mean? That looks pretty good. And this was the area where we were going to have, I believe, 8 different sections. And those sections were all going to be, if I remember correctly, why I hired Josh, it's like 8 different benefit-rich pieces of copy. These are our overcoming objection statements. Let's grab our first text right here out of our copy doc, and there is a piece of text. So I'm just going to hold down and duplicate and pop in my text right there. And then I have to figure out why this thing is flying up here all alone. Let's put those in an auto layout and remove the spacing, left align everything, and I think let's go left align with our headline. We do have center line at the top, but I kind of like the idea of left aligning. Let's just try it, and then we'll come back to it and we'll see how it works. This is a really long rag or really long line here, and I don't think I want it to be that long. So I'm just going to bring this in a little bit and turn it into like 2 lines or 3 lines, whatever that is. And then I'm kind of thinking I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's left align everything. Come inside, left align, and let's just grab our text left align those things as well. And then I don't think we need a sort of link here. So what I'd like to do is just kind of like fix one of them, and then we'll add, right, we'll add all of them properly once we've fixed them. So we have a logo, or an icon, excuse me. We'll leave this icon here for now. We'll just grab the first piece of text that says like experience mastery, something like that. And then it says 25 years of experience. Okay, great. Let's do that. Now let's style this thing and we'll turn it into a component, and we can just reuse that component over and over. How do we want to style it? How do we want to make it look? I think what we could do is I need to bring in, I'm missing my color, so I want to bring a little bit of color in here. And this is, again, just a stylistic choice. And when I look at my mood board, I see color, lines like this are a little bit more prevalent, a little bit more present. So I'm making kind of a creative decision right here. Why don't we do that? We'll add a stroke only to the left side, and then we'll add some padding to the left side like that. And our stroke will be our primary color. And why don't we widen that so we can actually see it a little bit better? That looks kind of cool. I don't mind that at all. And you can imagine that if I had 4 of those, like they're going to stack next to each other like that. They look kind of cool, actually. So why don't we turn that into Command Control K and turn that into a component. And I'm just going to add 1, 2, 3, 4 right there and get rid of that old one. And I'm going to leave these as is for now. I could come back in and replace these if we want to. And I might use something like phosphor icons. That's like a really, really great pack of icons. And let's say this is like mastery or experience. We might want to do something like a trophy. You can find like a good trophy icon. And they got a bunch of different styles. I actually really like the duotone ones. So maybe we just bring one of those on screen like so. Cut that, and I don't know, replace it with something like that. Could be kind of subtle. It's a little bit dark, like some of those, like the pieces of the icon. So I wonder if we just lighten it. No, yeah, we can keep it as is. That works. But I like those. Generally speaking, those are pretty good. So I'm going to take that row. It's sitting here in a row, and that row is inside of like a container. So I might just duplicate the row and have them in their own auto layout and bring them down like that. And that way they're still responsive. Sorry, we just got a little bit of freezing happening. I think I was copying the whole thing. So there we go. Yeah, it's set to fill. So again, we can grab this thing. Our picture is going to be a little wonky, but if we were to size down and start trying to make our design a little bit responsive, it's going to do that well. And then we know that that's going to be a problem area. And we're going to have to flip that into a 3 column and then maybe a 2 and then maybe a single column. That's what I'm kind of seeing over here. What's really great is when we get these examples from Reloom, it tells us that, that we might want to end up here, but it doesn't tell us a lot about those in-between states, those tablet states where things start breaking down. We can start to build our own solutions for those kind of moments there. So I feel like this area is pretty good. Let's do the about section. And we've been alternating dark light, dark light. Why don't we go back to dark here really quickly? I'm going to just do that little trick where I turn everything one color. I find the text. I'm going to turn that to white. I'm going to turn it to white, and then I'll grab that primary CTA color and turn it to black, just kind of inverting everything. But that way I can easily just target those colors that are sitting inside of here and, be able to flip things around without messing up my layout too badly. Why don't we grab this background image here maybe and zoom in. This is probably not the right image for this spot, but and start to insert some of our copy here. So let's do about, and just like that, Command C will paste that. Oh, we got another little section up above here. Cool. So I'm just going to pop that in there. I like that. It fits great. A little bit, yeah, like about Josh Flynn. Okay, that's looking good. And we know we need a button. So I can either come over to my assets and find a local component inside of starter, home. There's my button. Let me just drag one of those right in there. And there we go. We can get rid of these old buttons because those are not really needed. And do we like it like left, right like this? Or do we want to switch our layout to be right, left? Either way works for me. I don't mind. But I think what is kind of cool is kind of seeing the image on the left. There was some other stuff inside of what we liked and didn't like. I remember some little hand-drawn kind of elements. Like look at, we're really reflecting some of our inspiration, right? Like these light, bright buttons, these kind of like warm buttons popping off these dark backgrounds, some of these textures from our Polynesian stuff. But I know there was some like little hand-drawn elements. I think maybe they were there or somewhere else. So something about like the hand-drawn aspect of it is making me wish I had like a little arrow pointing to it, but we could leave it like this. I think this looks pretty good for now. And then why don't we come down now? I mean, we're starting to fly. We're starting to really pick up some speed. One thing though is we've started certain styles like this, and why don't we just really quickly switch that over to enter and make sure that we can fit all of that text. I feel like that looks better, but my gradient that's on that seems to be really blocked, right? So I can't see it really well. Let's grab that gradient and bring it down more. As soon as I change to enter, it like changed the visibility of that gradient. Okay, so I like this kind of like idea here, but we should probably keep that same style going. So why don't we bring this up here, and this can be like, it could say something like 25 years, like speaking about his experience, you know what I mean? So we can kind of tuck that up, and you can see it's overlaying on the photo. We're just going to command left bracket and move that behind, so everything always falls behind. That's a style that we have. Speaking of consistent style, we're always doing, I think it's 8 pixels of roundedness on things like images. You can see it there. On our cards, we're doing some roundedness, I believe. If not, that should be at about 8. There we go. Grab our original one. We'll set that to 8. Perfect. We're just kind of creating consistent styles here across the board. That looks really great. And again, we're doing left aligned. So what I might actually do is just kind of come up here and grab this header section, and I'm going to come down and Command Shift R, paste to replace. Everything's just left aligning it because we are now picking up speed like quite a bit, aren't we? So I think I'm just going to grab all of these tattoo images like this and come down and see if we can't get these inside. Let's see if we can. We have content there. I see it's in 2 separate rows. I think we could probably do that a little bit better. Why don't we do this, and we will use some of Figma's native wrapping like that. That seems pretty good. And then we can grab these and just size them in. You know, it's imperfect, but we get the point, right? What we're trying to do. We could put some minimum and maximum widths and do really cool stuff or whatever. But look, the wrapping like does almost exactly what we need it to do, right? We know that when we get it over in Framer, we're going to fix that up for sure. So that section, I mean, wow, is like almost completely done. I think we are missing like a view more button or link. So why don't we create a style for that really quickly? I'll probably just copy and paste this. I'm thinking like of a text link most likely. So why don't we drop down to like an H6, and let's see, we might come into that H6, and we have text, regular, text small. Let's go, actually there's a link size or style in here. So let's go text large link, that's 20. Yeah, that could work. And then we could just put something like view more. Don't mind that at all. It has that natural like underline, but let's change that to be like our primary like CTA color. I think that could be kind of cool. And why don't I just hit bold? I feel like that makes it a little bit better. Could we style that a little bit more? Maybe, potentially, for sure. Do we keep this Polynesian theme coming down the page like this? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's a bit overkill. I'm not really sure. You don't want to over theme something, but it does look kind of nice there. Okay, I don't mind that at all. That looks kind of cool. We might keep rolling with it and see what happens. I think, let's see, we had, I don't think we actually had this section. I think we had an FAQ section, and there was no sort of like image, like big, like CTA. You could totally do one, and it might be a good addition, but why don't we just keep rolling the way we're rolling, okay? We're going to do FAQ here, so instead of like all that long kind of stuff, why don't we just do like some simple text that says FAQ? No need for that long piece. Like, there we go. It had some cool text like actually written for us, and I think we had these are just like flying out there, like completely exposed and open, which I don't mind. I know that we're going to need a better button in here for sure, so why don't we just really quickly easily replace that button. And we could do that. We could also do some cool FAQ stuff, or like accordions collapsing it's a little bit more interesting once we get inside of Framer. Let's keep it like this for now. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring that button out just for now. I'm going to do that inversion technique again one more time. Let's just change the background there, take the text. Why don't we flip everything over to white, then grab our primary and move to black. Then we can bring our button back in. And the only reason I move my button out is because it too is orange, and I didn't want it to affect everything. So why don't we just play with these, because I feel like it could look kind of nice. It's a lot of information on the page, in my opinion, and you might want to tuck some of these away. So why don't we do that? To do that, I'm going to, I think, kind of create a component here and a style that goes along with it. So let's add a little bit of padding. And what color did we use for the background of these cards? Let's create some consistency here. It was this neutral, kind of neutral darker color is the name of it. So why don't we do that really quickly? I'm just going to select that. And why don't we give it a fill of that neutral darker color? Ah, okay, that looks good. And why don't we hide, in this case, the, I just deleted it, but I could have just Command-Shift-H to hide it. And on this row, I think I might want to put like a plus in there. So I'm going to bring phosphor icons back up because I don't think I have a plus, and we don't need this plus to be duotone. It could just be a nice bold kind of plus. I'm going to drag it in there and see if it pops up the right way. It kind of does. Let's get it inside that little container right there and just make sure that our auto layout is running from left to right and that the entire box is going to fill the container and the text itself is going to be the thing that fills. That way it's always going to push the icon to the far right hand side. That feels good. And then we'll just change the selection color here and do something like that. Okay, that looks pretty darn good if you ask me. And yeah, I don't mind it at all. So now look, we could just like put a bunch of these like this and take the spacing down, and you can either leave like a little 1 pixel gap there if you want, or you can butt them up right, you know, across each other or next to each other, and we can just fill these out like whatever these are. We'll put the actual content in when we get into Framer. Okay, so we're just going to kind of show, and why don't we actually show one of them with the text exposed, and we can't do that because we have those two. Tell you what we're going to do. We are going to put these back in a top to bottom, like a vertical stack or auto layout, and then we're going to grab the plus and we're going to put those two things in their Shift-A own auto layout that goes from left to right, and then the text will be exposed like this. We just need to make sure that that container fills again. We'll just redo this work really quickly. I'm going to fill like that. So now we can see the exposed question version like working there, which looks really, really nice. Okay, so that's kind of kicking it down, and you can see the unexposed versions. I'm just going to Command L there to hide all of my layers, and I think we might need just like maybe a stroke potentially. Could be kind of cool. Yeah, let's do a stroke on the bottoms of each one of these. So I'm just going to hit a stroke, and I'll put it on the bottom only. And why don't we do, yeah, let's do a full-blown white, but we'll just play with the opacity here, shall we? We'll bring the opacity of that all the way down to like 8. Okay, great. And copy that stroke just by clicking to the left of it over here in Figma. Grab all 3 of these and paste that as well. And on that last one, we don't really need, we could just hide it. And now we have separators in between. The only difference is it put them all the way around. One thing that Figma does not do is keep the side or like the direction of your borders. So you have to manually apply that. And when this thing is open, we're already kind of thinking about the interaction. It's going to kind of move to an X to close kind of mark. All right, so a little interactivity happening there. We have something really, really similar happening with our gallery as we do with our store. So I'm just going to copy this, and since it's an auto layout, I just pressed the down arrow and that moved it right there. And now we have something like online store here. So let's just do online. See how quickly we're starting to cook now, because custom jewelry. Okay, so there it is. We're going to do something like this. We'll take this text and boom, we'll pop those right there. And I think we only want to feature a couple of these because that's not really his big deal. His big deal is obviously tattoos. So online store is there. Why don't we go and grab a couple of these online store images, and I'm just going to come inside of this container, paste my 3 pieces of jewelry. I almost got rid of everything there by accident. Delete that. And why don't we just mess with these? And like, we need to shrink them up. We need to, there we go, find that balance yet again. Now I'm just holding down Command and finding the right kind of width for them. And they'll probably have some more interactivity there. We'll leave those for now as like fairly basic, but we will kind of make them consistent by rounding the corners. I think in our inspiration, we had some shop items and they had like a name and a price. So we could turn these into a component really quickly. Why don't we just, yeah, let's do it. Why not? We're going to grab this one and we'll call this Tiki necklace. It could be something like that. And let's see. Let's have this actually hug the content for the text that's there. And we'll have this whole thing kind of hug the content. So now you can see we're kind of building a card with floating elements next to it. And we'll copy paste like this. Actually, why don't we just grab this link? So I can already see a link right there. I'll come down into this element that I'm building, and this will say something like see details. Great. And we can put those in their own auto layout, moving from left to right and filling the container. And of course, we'll have this one fill the container. That way it pushes the link all the way over to the right-hand side. Let's just reduce the spacing so these cards and the text and everything feel like they're connected to the card. So boom, boom. You can fill up the space. Let's get rid of these other necklaces. And this is link large, I think. We might want to go link medium or link small. And I think probably back to that medium side. I think that feels good. Okay, great. Fantastic. And yeah, could we put the price on there? There's all sorts of things we could do, but we don't necessarily need to do. We're really just trying to crank through and help to kind of understand how to build these sections a little bit more. Why don't we kind of duplicate this and use this as the starter for a footer? This could say something like contact. And then, you know, I think we had like some text down here. It says something like, are you ready to create something extraordinary together? Sure, we don't need these FAQs. But underneath, we're going to have like a section where we put, I think we need to have like the address. I think maybe we saw some inspiration of having a map in there. So why don't we kind of like look at this and use this as a way of redesigning this footer. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and just paste this here kind of as my reference. And I'm using the elements that have been given to us. In almost every black section, we probably should have carry that style down. You know, we have like something that's there, like some sort of like little gradiated like word, right? Let's make sure we're bringing that down into these other sections. Let's do something like contact. In Hawaii, they say like aloha to say hello and goodbye. So why don't we put aloha in there? We can contact. That's kind of cool. And then let's do something kind of, we also like in a lot of these black sections, not all of them, we have kind of a card element. So why don't we, I don't know, let's do something kind of fun. Let's imagine this whole thing being kind of like a card. I'm going to detach this from the instance like that. I'm going to have it fill the whole container, and I'm going to put my content and my links and everything, my address and stuff all inside there. So instead of having, you know, a review down there, maybe I come back up here. I think I had a map. Let's grab that map and come back down. And I'm going to put a map inside of there. Like we want that to fill the container, obviously. And we're going to format this and lay everything out. I don't need the stars, but I do think I had an address. This is the address per the content doc. So why don't we pop the address in there? So I think we had address and we had the map and then we had some links. Why don't I just cheat really quickly and come down here and grab a couple of these, like let's do, you know, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Okay, great. And we'll come back into our card, paste those down below. I don't like that they're black. They shouldn't be black. So let's make them white. And whoa, I lost them. Doing neutral there. We want to have both of them kind of stand out and be inverted. Great. Okay, fantastic. So these all kind of belong together. Let's put them in a group. And then we have a piece of content up here. It's its own thing. Why don't we just reduce the size of those being spaced? And now we can go from left to right. Let's see. This, we actually want to, this is fixed. We don't want that. We want it to hug the contents. And we want it to fill the container. And for our social media, we want that to hug the contents as well. And we need our whole card to fill the container. That's going to kind of bring everything in. We're working with the parent and the children containers. Now the height of it is fixed. So let's have that fill the container as well. And it is looking really large. So we can manually now kind of take up a little bit more space or a little less space here. Let's grab our social media links and put those like so, and then shoot those. Each of those can get shot over to the right. We're just kind of creating space there for our element. Now it feels very, very responsive. I like that. I feel like this is pretty good. Let's center everything. And I think maybe one more. We'll put a link down in there that says something like nav. I think we had that in the content doc. So let's grab this and that. We're going to grab our address and our heading, auto layout top to bottom. We're going to shrink that up, and we just want to hug contents, but something's going on really weird. We had a weird sizing there for our link, and again, that's a large link. We might want to move down to the medium link. That feels pretty good. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and if you don't like how this is spaced and you want to give that a little bit more room, you can do so. I think just having, I don't know, it could be a little asymmetrical there, or maybe we could even do something like this and be a little bit more playful with it. That's kind of fun. I like that. Okay, cool. Let's get rid of the old footer and this example footer, and I feel like we're pretty good. We have just designed our entire page. Why don't we bring this into prototype mode and just take a look at it and see what we've designed. We don't want to view this inside of, there we go. It's a little bit more responsive now, so you can see as we're like sliding through the laptop, it's showing us our design. Pretty cool. Again, all of that's placeholder content, but we were able to use this. Oh, we could fix that up really quickly. Wow, something's wrong with our FAQ. I don't know what. Our top one for some reason is not filling the space as it should be. There we go. That's fixed. Great. And that actually matters too, because as we start to push things over to Framer, it is going to matter how we have things laid out here inside of Figma. Okay, very, very cool. I think we are pretty close here. And in our next step, we're going to be taking this design and then we're going to be exporting it and getting everything into Framer, building it, adding our interactions, and publishing this thing live onto the web. All right, we're ready to move from Figma over to Framer, but if you remember, we didn't design a responsive version. We didn't do mobile, we didn't do tablet, and that's not a problem because we're gonna let Framer do all of that hard responsive work for us. But at the very least, what I like to do is actually copy my designs, my fully designed desktop view, and that mobile view that came from Reloom library, and bring it over into a FigJam file. And I like to annotate and identify the areas of concern that are going to need to take place once I start thinking about responsive design. So for instance, when I think about this navigation, that's going to break down, and Reloom has recommended to us that we're probably going to need some other solutions. So we're going to make sure that we come up with another solution. Another thing, same thing here, like when you notice our testimonials, these are going to move from what looks like a 3-column or a horizontal layout, and it's going to have to transition into a 1-column vertical layout, or we're going to have to do single images and sliding and change the shape of them. So we'll have to address those. These rows of 4 benefits or value propositions are going to have to move to a 1-column. This 2-column layout is also going to have to move to a stacked 1-column layout. This gridded portfolio layout is going to have to move to not 2, because we're probably going to want to keep it nice and large, but to a 1-column layout. And even notice that around our site, the differences between the type size here for our headline is very different than what Reloom suggested for the smaller one. That's because when you move between these different screen sizes, your type sizes should change. Now here's the good news, Framer. It's going to do all that for us, which is super great. But I just want to identify these issues and these things, so I make a little bit of a plan, a little bit of a task list for myself before I make this move. Now, making the move is really, really easy. I've actually opened up Framer in my browser. I've started a brand new project. You can see here, my canvas is by default set to 1200, and I'm working in the desktop mode or desktop view. That's why we designed our website at 1200, because we are ready to go. Now, there's a lot of different ways you could do this. You could use FramePad and bring all of those components in and just customize them like I showed you earlier. You could start with a template. You could start with things inside of Framer. But I want to actually walk through and show you how to bring things from your actual custom design from Figma to Framer. And we're going to cheat a little bit by using Framer's own plugin for Figma. And that's how we're going to start, by bringing the elements over. And so to do so, all we have to do is come over here to our Figma file and open up Figma to HTML editor. Now, whatever section or frame that you have highlighted here, going to bring that in. So we might just want to name these a little bit better so we don't have these weird slashes. And you can take the entire parent container. We could grab this whole thing and say, hey, Framer, copy this whole thing. We'll bring it over as one piece. But I find that I get better results when I bring them over section by section. So I'm going to grab just this header section. I'm going to open up that plugin and click on it, and you'll see it's going to tell me down here at the bottom that it's copying the layers, and then it's copied the 10 layers. All I have to do now is paste it into Framer. That's mind-blowing. So I'm going to move over, and I'm going to grab my area here and just Command or Control V, depending on your operating system, and the plugin's going to do that work and just pop everything in for me. Now, it doesn't look exactly the same, and you might have had an issue where your height was fixed like this, and so you only got a piece of it. All you have to do is come up here to the height and say, hey, we want you to fit the content, okay? That's it. And now everything's going to expand. And the only reason it looks a little bit different is because it's taken that large background image, and all I have to do is set that to absolutely position it just like you would inside of Figma, and move it into place wherever I want it. I think it was something like that. And you will notice that it's kind of on top of stuff, and that's not what we want. We want it to be behind, and the layers panel is not actually going to help us here. What we actually have to do is come over here into our right-hand section and play with what's called the Z index. And I can move that Z index around to 0, and then I can grab my image, for instance, and I can give that a new style and give it a Z index of 1, and now you'll see it's sitting on top. Z index is kind of an interesting phenomenon. We don't have that in Figma, where it's going to control where it's at in distance between the user and the actual design, right? So Z indexing something would put it further in front of the other thing. That's the idea. And so that section looks pretty sweet. And I'm going to tell you what we're going to do later on is you'll notice that as I play my design, it looks pretty good. I'm getting some sort of weird, strange behavior here. So that's why I like to go section by section. I like to fix the sections and fix the behavior, and then bring in the next section. So why don't we fix this section? First things first, this image is all sorts of messed up. And so let's get the image here, and we're not going to stretch it, but we're going to fill. The image is going to sit inside. It's going to fill. And we press play. That's already a little bit better. Let's fix that image even a little bit more by actually grabbing the position and choosing focal point. This is going to bring up a really cool interface where we can say, I always want the focal point of the image to be his face. So go ahead and apply that. And when I press play, you can see as it tries to size down, it's going to try to honor that focal point, which is really, really cool. But now I have really weird resizing of my text. That's not right. We don't want that. Well, let's grab our frame, and just like in Figma, we're going to see what's going on here, right? So we have our content, and a lot of this has to do with the width. And so this is set to 100%. That's set to 100%. And you can see that the width, for some reason, for that text is set to fixed. We don't want that. We want it to fill, 1FR or 100%. Let's do that for all of these. We're going to set that to fill, fill, and fill. And now when we press play, we should keep things fairly centered, and it has some resizing for us, which is really, really great. Now, if we had really long text, we don't want that to expand too far, maybe. So we could actually grab this kind of lockup here. We'll rename our our layer panel here. It feels very similar to Framer where you can rename things. And we could, if we wanted to, set a maximum width. All you got to do is come over here and say, hey, give me a max width. Maybe we want to do a max width of something like, 1200 pixels. Set that, boom, it is now fixed and it will never expand past that. Now it doesn't really make a lot of sense right now because we don't have a long line of text, but it will come in handy later. I promise you that. Okay, so we're setting a max width of 1200 pixels, and we could do the same here for our image if we want our image to stay the same. So that's, keep that in mind. If we want to go max width 1280, watch out, we're messing with the opacity now by accident. Max width of 1280 pixels, like so. Now our image will stop growing at a certain width as well. And this is how we're going to actually maintain consistent alignment for our containers or containing elements inside of Framers by setting max widths on things. So this looks pretty good. You notice we did not actually bring in the navigation. We're going to solve that problem a little bit later, but for now, why don't we build our next section, which is going to be this testimonial. So I'm going to make sure I'm selecting the section again. I'm going to activate that Framer plugin, come on over, select the entire document or the artboard, paste, and it just pastes right in, just like that. Now that's beautiful. It brought it right in. And we can leave it like this and try to figure out what to do with it, or we can start to utilize some of Framer's kind of pre-built components that might be really, really nice for us. So for instance, I want this to move. I'm going to go over to Insert, and I'm going to look through the menu and find, is there anything kind of cool that I might want to use here? Like maybe we could put a video in there, or maybe we have some interactive things. I definitely like this idea of either a carousel or a slideshow or what we call a ticker. So I might use a ticker, and when I do that, it's going to bring that ticker right outside my canvas. I can just drag that in, but before I do that, why don't I go into my layers panel? I'm going to grab all of these testimonial boxes. Watch out, I'm kind of messing things up a little bit. Grab the testimonial boxes, cut those out of there, and I'm going to paste them over here for now. I'm going to bring my ticker inside here, and I'm going to turn off the fixed width. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I fill. And for some reason, we have kind of like something else going on there. Now you can see our ticker is taking up the full width. And why don't we raise the height of it? And because I have some nice padding on this, it's set at 112 and 64, top and bottom 112, left and right of 64. I'm getting some immediate control over our section. Now, you might ask yourself, okay, like how does this ticker thing work? Well, we could just grab our little dots over here on the right-hand side of our ticker, and you can drag this out and connect it to different items. And notice how as soon as I connect it, it's bringing those elements inside, right? So let's actually zoom out a little bit more and do one more. We'll connect it there. We have our 3 elements, and now I'm managing that interactive component. If I just press Command P to preview and I scroll down, you can see I have immediate interaction, and I can set it with all sorts of different things. So for instance, I could come over here and scroll down the right-hand panel just like you're inside of Figma, inside of a design tool, and it tells me I have 3 children that I can reorder if I want to, or add new ones. I can slow down the speed of this ticker, which is really nice. I think it's going a bit fast if we want to read. We can move it from left to right, align it in the center. Let's increase the gaps in between them. I think that looks a little bit better. And then let's do on hover. We want to slow it down even more so that if somebody's hovering over it, we want to read. We do have that clipping, and if we want to, we can take the fade off and it'll just clip its way all the way out through the border there. And if we want also, we can grab our ticker we grab our section, and we could remove the left and right padding from our entire section. Now again, when we preview our website, we have something that's moving all the way off canvas, which is really, really nice. And when I roll over it, you can see how it slows down. That's a pretty nice little interaction if you ask me. The only thing it's really missing is, for some reason, we missed out on our text. And I think that was that extra component that was kind of weird and funky that was sitting in there. And I think the reason this happens is because it's very hard for Framer to understand outline text like this. So what I'm actually going to do is go up to help and just say, hey, I want to outline this stroke and turn this into almost like an SVG. So I think that if we now export this as an SVG and rename it review outline, something that we will remember, we can just export this to our desktop, and let's just bring it into our document. I'm just dragging it onto the canvas. We have some kind of weird behavior there. Let's fix that before we go, shall we? So that is not good. We need to fix and figure out what happened to our S. Let's just get the word review there for now. I think that'll be easier. We could fix that whole thing, but that's more of a vector art based thing, and we don't need to worry about that. So let's just get the word review right now, okay? We'll drag it in, and just like we did before, we're going to absolute position this thing, bring it up, and I think we had those sitting on top, or no, they were sitting on the bottom, pardon me. And let's just center align that whole thing, bring it up, and again, let's hit that Z index and make it kind of fall behind just like that. That looks now almost exactly, it's almost perfect. Besides the fact that the word review is not pluralized, okay? So again, Command P to preview, looking pretty good. We are coming along with our website already, okay? So let's go down to our next section. I'm gonna grab this section, I'm gonna rename it the Y section, and I'm going to open up my plugin, and I'm going to go from Figma to HTML for Framer. And again, we're gonna grab the entire desktop here. We're gonna paste that in. And you might be saying, it's really weird that you have these like testimonial things just sitting out here to the right, but that's how it works because Framer is an infinite canvas. I could just leave these here and I can constantly go back and deal with them. And if I want to, I could turn these into components. So I'm really just creating one component and updating the content that's within it. We might come back and do that a little bit later as well. So let's take we're gonna rename this and call this our polyband here. You guessed it, we're gonna go absolute. And now I can do some of the positioning in the top here. You can see that we're pinning it to the top, and why don't I put it at 0? That means it's always gonna stay anchored to the top there, just like so. And we're having a little weird issue, so let's just bring our Z index down, and boom, it put it exactly where we need it to go. Framer's very easy to use. Feels just like a design tool. Now I can grab this element, and I can even go negative if I want to, or I can start to, you know, like just work with it as is. I like it. It's fine where it is, I think. For the most part, our layout came in here pretty flawless, I think. And so I'm pretty excited about that. Actually, that's almost perfect. Let's go ahead and press play. Okay, great. All of our elements are there. Let's move on, shall we? Okay, we're gonna probably have to come back and tweak a lot of this stuff as we go. We know that we're gonna have to fix this, and again, we're gonna need to outline stroke, just like so. The S's for some reason are just getting really, really messed up. So let's just get rid of those S's. 25 year, I guess, great. And then we'll export that as an SVG and rename that years text. And let's export that onto the desktop. Great. And now we can grab this whole thing. Again, Figma HTML. It's naming it layout /1, which is going to be really ugly. We don't want that. We're just going to press really quickly Option L, and that'll close up all of our different elements here. So I'm going to grab my main container I'm working in, Command V to paste it in. It's just going to take a second. And again, reminder, we're grabbing that about section. And you can see it's not honoring that text. That's why we're having that weird SVG issue. But that's okay because we have our new years text. We can just bring that in. And we're going to cut that. And we're going to paste that there. And again, we're going to set it as absolute. Drag it where we want. Maybe center it like so. And let's just push it up like that. And put the Z index down. That way it's fading behind our other elements there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And yeah, that looks pretty nice. Now we've introduced a button, and we know we're gonna have to come back and turn that into a component because we're gonna be using that in multiple different places, but our layout's looking pretty good. We're gonna do one more here, and then I think we might stop because it's gonna take us a little while to finish the responsive stuff. I'll let you keep working on the rest of the sections. So I'll just do this one more section really quickly right here. And just copy that. It's copying all the layers, done it successfully. Grab your desktop, paste it in. And again, it's just going to take a minute, and we'll probably rename both of these sections. And so they just have some sort of proper naming. So let's name this one the about section like that. And then I think this one down here is the gallery section, right? Let's just, if we put this gallery inside of it by accident, let's just raise it up and put it on top. Perfect. We just drag these around, put them where we need to, right? Okay, gallery. Yeah, we had our about section selected, so when we pasted it inside. It did what we told it to do. But I got to just grab it and drag it outside. Pretty nice, okay? So again, let's absolutely position. Let's do that at 0 pixels. The Z index just goes down 1. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And now we have something kind of interesting happening, right? Like our images are flowing outside of our container. And that's because we have our stack set here. You can see it's moving from left to right. But we could also set it as a grid. So why don't we set it up as a grid, a 3-column grid. And our elements inside have very strange sizing. So we're going to have to fix this right now as well. We want the width to be fill. We want the row to be 1, 2 rows. How about 3 rows? We're kind of dictating size here a little bit. So why don't we actually dictate size even more so? Let's call these 1FR. And the height, let's do something like 300 pixels. And we should see them kind of grow there a little bit. What are they here? They're about 340 and 334. They should be perfectly square. So if we want to, we can just make them perfectly square. So we could do 340 pixels of width and then 340 pixels of height. And we have our 3 rows, but it's not fitting. So I think we should just go back to that 1FR and we'll drop the size of these down. We're just modifying slightly. And we need a rounded border. So let's just go over to radius here and just pump that up to 8. Perfect, just like so. Now we have a nice clear, and because we're using grid, it's going to be very, very easy to turn this into a responsive grid when we drop down to those smaller sections. So again, let's preview our site. Command P, drop down, looking really, really good. Our image is there, our text is there. All of our images for our tattoos are there. We are cranking through. Now, we won't keep doing these bottom sections, but instead we're going to do something a little bit more interesting, which is get our navigation in. You can see our navigation here at the top. And I could bring this over, but then I'll have to custom build everything. I would rather insert a navigation here, like a really basic navigation, just like so. So I'm going to grab that and I'm just going to click. It's inserting it at the bottom. Why don't we just press the up arrow and move it all the way to the top. And this will be your first introduction to components. Let's actually take a step back and go even simpler with components before we dive into this navigation a little bit more on the complex side. Okay, so we have our button here. We definitely want to turn that into a component. And I can do that. I can right click either on the component there or on the layer, or I can hit the hotkey of Command Shift K. I'm going to turn that into a component, and I'm going to call that button, and let's just call it button CTA or something like that. We create it, and it's going to shoot me to our component editing area. And you can see that we're currently editing the button CTA. I can very quickly go back home. How do I find these again? Well, you can double click on any component to get back into that editing area, or you can go over to assets and see the things that are happening inside of your project. You can double click there and it'll lead you back in there as well. So now we're editing a component, and there's a couple things we can do here, right? We can create new variants of this component, and we can create like cool like hover states and different active states and different things for it. So why don't we create a really simple hover state, and why don't we add like a little bit more action onto this button, because I think it removed our outline, which we don't want. We want to bring that outline back. Okay, so we're going to come into our styles here, and why don't we add a border? Okay, so you can see here we have border. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to make it, let's see, we don't have any color styles here yet. Why don't we bring a color style in? Okay, so why don't we click on our orange here, and let's just copy that color style really quickly, and I'm just going to draw a frame really quickly out here, and I'm going to color it this orange color, and I'm going to add that to my styles. We're going to call this primary, and now we have a color style that's been made. Okay, so let's go back into that button, and I think we're probably going to need yet again another color style, because I think we have that light orange that's being used as well. So let's get in, Let's find that light orange from our design. And why don't we pop that in there? And again, new style. We're going to call this primary light, like so. Great, create that. Now you can see we have 2 color styles. And again, you can find those over in your assets panel as well. So we just want to make sure that we're using all the right elements here. We're really dialing it in. So let's go to our linear gradient here. And we want to make sure that this one is using primary light, that this one is using primary. Good stuff. We like that. And now let's click on our element again. Let's go to solid. We don't want that. We want our primary light. And let's go back to our border and let's do, I think, solid dashed, something like that. And actually, we might just do a shadow instead. Might get rid of that element, turn on shadow, and we're not going to go X or Y. We're not going to go blur, but we are going to go spread. So we might do this with a spread instead. Let's go primary or primary light and bring the opacity of it down. I think primary with the opacity down. No, probably the light one. I think we had that down at like 12 or 13 pixels. That's pretty cool. And okay, yeah, that's pretty good. That's a little bit better, I think. Why don't we now make the hover state of this, okay? So we're going to do hover state. Click there on hover, and now we get to change this button any way that we want to. So, you know, we have our element here, and okay, great, fantastic. Why don't we change the color of the gradient, for instance? Why don't we just shift like the gradient position and see if that's kind of like obvious. Now when we come back here and Command P, you'll notice that we just get this nice little shift of gradient in there. That's kind of cool. I like that. So we can do all sorts of fun stuff here. That's probably enough for us now on that simple component. We could turn our other elements into components. And we can even kind of add some variables or properties to our components. For instance, right now, every button looks like it's going to say book a free consult, because when I get out here, there's nothing I can do about it. If I try to double click to change the text, it's going to bring me back into the editing. But what we can do is come down, and you can see very similar to Figma, I can see the content that's inside that button says book a free consult. Why don't we create a variable? It's a plain text variable. The default will say book a free consult, but we'll just write here button label. And I'm actually going to copy this and then just say button label. That's what we want actually to show up on the button. And it's going to be a text area. No, it's going to be a single line of text when we close this. Look at that, button label. That looks really, really good. Now we can come in, and so the content has been selected there. And one of the things we can do is we can just come in and change the style. So why don't we create a paragraph text style here, and then we'll edit this, and we just want to make sure this is all uppercase, right? So let's go transform. We'll do uppercase. There we go. Our button label is done, and we can find that text style we just created in our sidebar here. Let's rename that to button text. There we go, button text like that. That looks really, really good. Now you'll notice out here we have this button label, and we can come down and we can replace it with book a free consult. And I'm doing this in lowercase, and when I update it, because we set that text style as uppercase, it's always going to just transfer everything or convert everything. Now let's mess with this header that we have up here, because it looks very, very different, our navigation, from our current navigation, right? So we're going to double click on that, and you'll notice it is a component. And when I zoom out, I have a desktop and I have a mobile. I have mobile versions of both open and close, and they've already baked in some interactions for me, which is really, really nice. Okay, so when I go here and press preview on my website, you'll see it shrink down, and nothing is happening right now because currently this is set to be our desktop size. You can see our variant down here. It's using desktop. It could switch over to one of the other sizes, the mobile size, the phone size. When it does that, it changes the variant that we have there. So why is it not working when our size shifts down? Well, that's because we haven't added a new breakpoint. So if we go here, we can say, hey, give me the tablet breakpoint of my design. And it's going to put that right next to my current design. And it's going to do its best to make things responsive. So you're learning two things right now: how to add new breakpoints and start to do some of that responsive design work, and then how to actually maintain and create different types of components that have different states depending on the size. And so here we go. We've set our tablet size here. We can come in and select our navigation. And why don't we swap that over to our phone view, just like so. Now when we preview our desktop version, as it starts to get down, you'll notice that top number, when it hits 810, it's actually going to kick over, just like it did right there, boom, into our desktop variant. It reads the media query or the size of the browser, and it understands that it's time to implement this already interactive navigation bar that's been created for us. So now all we get to do is come in and update this navigation to match our own, which means we're going to need a few things. We're going to need our logo here. So why don't we just export this out, and we'll call this logo.png. If you have an SVG version, even better, but we're just going to drag that PNG version in here like so. Going to cut that, Command X, and we're just going to come in here and let's look at how this thing is built. You'll notice over here we have a bunch of different auto layouts, or stacks as they call them, here inside of Framer. I'm going to paste that inside. Let's get rid of the old Framer logo. We have that there. That feels really, really good. Okay, let's zoom out. And what do we want to do here? We want these links. We actually probably want the whole thing to not distribute to the start being the left-hand side. We don't want it to be the end, right? That's going to be the right-hand side. We want it to be probably spaced between, and look at that. It's gone ahead and spaced everything out for us. Now we get to come over to our right-hand side and just make our updates here, right? So we only have 3 pages. And why don't we go into our assets and grab our button that we made and drag one of those in here as well. Put that on the right-hand side. Great. That's looking pretty good. And now what we want to do is grab the entire thing, and let's just check and see. We have a little bit of padding on our logo here. We could probably remove all of that padding. It's shoving everything to the edges here. We can grab the entire element here and put some padding on the left and right hand sides. Let's go 0 on top, 0 on bottom, and let's hide this. We'll just jump in and go 20 pixels on the left and right hand side. Now you can see a little bit of that padding. That feels really, really good. And we're probably going to want to update this. So how about book a free consult, like so. And we can change our pages to about, gallery, and contacts. So why don't we zoom in and change this really quickly. We could do about, gallery, if I could spell at all, and contact, something like that. And now these 3 text links are probably the wrong color, so let's change the color of those, and we're going to need a black color. And since we're making a black color, why don't we just create a color style out of that? Create that. Boom, it's using our color style. It has our text links inside. Why don't we bump this up to 10 on the top, 10 on the bottom, just a little bit of spacing. And then our height, why don't we have it fit the content? It's going to respect that padding just a little bit. We come back home, look at that. We have a beautiful navigation up top here with our button in it, and we can just push things down to the middle. Now we're getting the wrong order for some reason when we get down to our navigation or our mobile navigation, but we can fix that, right? We can double click on our mobile one and see that we just have things a little bit wonky and a little bit out of place. So why don't we just swap those around, and now things are in the right place and we get some beautiful responsive nature. Now, we also talked about the issues with responsive text. We said, let's let Framer do all of that. And sure enough, we're going to let Framer do all of that right now, because you'll notice that our navigation is changing, but our text sizes are not. Oh, that's not good. So first thing we're going to do is come in and we're going to grab our piece of text here, and we don't have a text style set up for it. Let's create a new style, and that is our H1 style. And when I click edit here, and we zoom out just a little bit, there's all sorts of things we can change. The font, the weight, all the details, but those have been brought over for us as we brought everything over from Figma. So do we want to balance it? Do we want this to be open type? There's all sorts of different options, really cool stuff here inside of Framer. But one of the things I really love is, do we want to add breakpoints? Yes, I do. As soon as I press that, you'll notice there was a change in my document, right? When we go back, do it again, we see that all of a sudden we have a large size, which our size is 128, and it's gone ahead and done some of the smart math for us. It goes, hey, this should probably be about 102 when you get down to that medium size. Now, what about our small size? Why don't we create a new breakpoint for mobile and zoom up to the top? It's still using that size. So let's come here really quickly, edit our size, and we don't have another breakpoint here. We need to add that next breakpoint, the small breakpoint, just by right-clicking and adding. I went ahead and did that. Now we go from, as you can see, 128 to 102 to 82. So it's making those recommendations for you, and you can change them to your heart's content. But a lot of times out of the box, the recommendations are good. What else do we have to do to make this section work and be responsive? Well, let's just play with the image size a little bit. We'll just pull this up. Same thing here. We'll pull this up. I like it a lot. I think it's working really, really well. Now, we come and just close up our sections. Let's click into our mobile one. We're going to see we have our lockup here and we have our entire header. Our header is holding on to the same padding left and right, top and bottom as our desktop is. And this is different from maybe other web design systems where, you set it once and maybe there's some sort of like percentage. You can totally do percentages here if you want to, but I find the easiest way is just to do a little change here. So I'm going to go into my header and left and right. Let's go from 64 down to maybe 44. Notice how this went blue. If I want to, I can always reset these, usually pretty easily. We'll see. Or we can just come into this one as well. So let's go into our header for mobile and take those down to not 64, not 44, but more like 24. Now we're utilizing the real estate there a lot more. The line height on my text is a little bit wonky. I think maybe I'd want to come back and fix that. But for the most part, we've actually just created pretty decent responsive nature, responsive typography or adaptive typography, responsive layout here, and responsive navigation. And all we have to do is go in and update those navigation elements, design them however we want them, and they will reflect here as well. We also have some interactive elements here. Why don't we do just a few more things and then we will end. Otherwise, we could spend hours here building this whole thing out. What I want to do is I'm currently, each one of my rows is set in their own individual row. And so I could actually grab these out of the rows for my value propositions here. And I can bring them together like so. And I can grab this whole row, this element. We probably don't need it the way that it's being built there. Actually, we can bring it back in there. Delete the second row. We don't need that. And let's set this to be grid. And in our desktop version here, which is what we're working on, we can set it to 4 columns. And then because we've done that, you'll notice it's being reflected in all of the artboards on the right-hand side. It's listening. And you can override them as you go down on those smaller artboards. So let's come over here. And let's change this now to a 2 column. And then we get over here to our mobile view. Let's change this to a 1 column. Okay. And again, we can come in here and change our typography. So notice our typography here. I'm actually just going to lock our Polynesian tribal element that's there. So I stopped clicking on it. And I think we called this one our H2, didn't we? So let me see. This is our H2. So why don't we add that new style? I'm going to select and just create a new style. That's our heading 2. And you can have multiple H1s, multiple H2s, although you probably don't want to. And we can add those breakpoints. And so you can see we have immediate sizing breakpoints as we go down. That looks really, really good. The next thing we need to do is just make sure that things are sized properly. Now you notice we're getting really weird behavior with our text, and it's stretching out on our mobile past our container. Now that's a pretty good telltale sign that you have things set to a fixed width and it's trying to honor that width. So I like to go all the way back up the mountain, the top of the mountain to the desktop there, and just check it out. And sure enough, look, it's fixed. So instead, why don't we set that to fill the space? And you can see it doesn't make a lot of change here on our desktop, but it made a huge change over here on our mobile version. Same thing here. We're going to fill, and it's trying to respect that 771. Where's it getting that? Well, we came over here, we manually fixed the size here, right? So it tried to manually fix the size for us as well. And so that's a good note that we could do it that way. Back in Figma, we could have probably just added a maximum width. We could do that here right now. So why don't we set this to fill, and then we can add that max width of 7.7 pixels. And let's try that again. Max width of 770 pixels. When I say good, it's going to go ahead and make sure it max widths here, but we get that nice flow over here in our mobile views. Now again, this is where we can start to add some of those variations of padding. We made those variations of padding to our top section. We can do that here for our bottom section as well. Our Y section has 64 pixels here. When we come to the tablet, we drop down to 44, and we get over to our mobile, we could drop down to 24. Right? And we're going to get really consistent padding and spacing on each of these device sizes. Okay, we can also change all the gaps, all the spacing, everything there. This one's going to be really easy for this layout. We just want to make sure that we're moving for the direction of our stack. In Figma they call them auto layouts, and Framer they call them stacks. Let's move that to a vertical direction stack, and then let's we can even manipulate the size of the height of our element here. Let's unlock it and just drag it up, and then set the image to not stretch like that, but instead fill. And now we get really, really responsive stuff. And you probably want to set that behavior of fill at the top level, and it'll cascade down across all of the different screen sizes and resolutions. That feels pretty good. And we can actually, like take the same thing and do the same layout choice we made and do it over here on mobile. And again, we have that fixed width text. So we're going to have to come in here and just say, hey, make sure that you fill that space. That fixes it on our smaller device sizes. And then we can come in and just do our spacing. So 44 for our section, and then 24 left and right for our mobile. And a couple little tweaks and changes here. Like our text is probably a little too small. You can't even read that it says 25 years. Let's just push that up. And we can barely read it here. So why don't we push it up like that? Looks pretty good. We zoom into our mobile. We'll probably want to push that up a little bit more. And this is where we might actually even start thinking about changing the sizing or the padding for the top and bottom of our containers, but we can leave that be for now. Okay. Same thing is happening here. This is looking pretty good. I think we have this in a grid. Why don't we just, in our mobile view, move this over to a 2-column grid? Love that. And we don't want it to be a fixed size. We want it to fill the space. Same thing is going to happen here. Fill the space. And something else is going on. We're inside of like a parent container that is for some reason fitting, and got to make a couple little changes here. Maybe it has massive amounts of padding on it. No, I don't think so. Everything seems to be fine there. I'm gonna bump that up, our little Polynesian band up there to the top, and figure out why our content is not fully like filling the space here. So let's go here. If we do 100% here, yeah, that didn't quite work. So something is telling me that it is a fixed width, and that is very, very wrong. So it's the gallery itself is fitting the content instead of filling. So that's the real issue. We just realized right there. Fit and fill are very, very similar words, but they're not doing the same thing. So instead we want to fill, and now you'll see immediately it fills the container the way it's supposed to, and it fills our issue over here. Same thing, text is broken. That's okay, we can fill it. Why don't we just lock our poly really quick, our tribal up there really quickly, and then again, set to fill. We could do the same thing here. We could fill. We could set that minimum maximum width again, of course, do the whole thing, and we need the container that those are in the parent container to fill as well. And then, boom, it fixes everything there. Let's change our padding here. Again, 44. And down here to 24. So 24 and one more over. Boom, 24. We fixed that. And we have this at a 2-column grid. Let's just quickly grab this and drop it down to a 1-column grid. And look at that. We should have a fairly responsive website across the board. Everything is ebbing and flowing nicely. We could fix these to fit a little bit more if we had more time. These are moving in and changing columns. Those are really beautiful and nice. Our layout here is turning from a 2-column to a 1-column. Okay, super nice. The same thing with our gallery here. We have 3 down to 2, down to a 1-column gallery. Beautiful, like that. We're loving that. The last thing we might want to do is add a couple of custom little interactions, maybe some animations to this, maybe spice the whole thing up, and that's really easy to do inside a Framer as well. I can actually grab these and just head over, like this top section here. let's do a nice entrance animation. So I'm going to make that top piece appear. On appear, it's going to fade in, and we can kind of play with the effect there a little bit. Right now it's disappearing. It's showing us where it's coming from. We don't want to scale down. We want it to offset Y by, let's see, do about 30, maybe 20, and we can change the easing and timing, but let's just test it out and see how it looks. We'll press play. You get a nice little animation there. Why don't we reload that so you can see? I'm going to animate in. We can delay that. Why don't we come in here really quickly on effect, grab the spring, and then we can just add a little bit of a delay, maybe a 0.5 second delay. We press play, it waits, and then it pops up. Let's reload. Beautiful. We could take that same effect if we really like it. And this is what's really cool. We can just copy that effect, and we can grab other elements here, and we can paste the same effect on it, just like that. Do the same thing here. Let's find paste effect, and maybe we want to do the same thing with the button. Paste effect. Now all of those have a similar effect on them. We can go through and change the delay on them if you want, or you do it all at once. I'd like to change the delay on it a little bit, I think. So we'll just change the delay here to this one to be maybe 0.2 seconds. And then this one will be, and notice as we start to edit them, they just keep you here. I'm going to make this one 0.4 seconds. I'm going to make this one 0.6 seconds. And our button's going to come up in 0.8 seconds. So we should get a nice staggered entrance animation just like that. Beautiful. I love it. Feels really good. Why don't we actually grab our element down below as well? We'll do another effect, and maybe we'll say scroll animation or scroll speed. So let's do scroll animation when the layer is in view. We don't want it to replay. We want it to fade in. We want it to scale in. Let's do scale in. And the entrance animation is going to look like this. We can choose the scale, maybe like that. And the opacity could be maybe not all the way down, but slightly down. And why don't we 3D skew this thing really quickly? So we'll just move it, you know, maybe the x-axis. So, and a little bit on the y-axis. This is not going to be the type of animation I would recommend, but I think it will showcase and highlight, you know, the abilities that we have here. So let's try that really quickly. Let's just see. It was very, very fast. Let's try it again. Okay, great. And I'm just going to change one thing. I'm going to make it not when it's in view, but when we get maybe to the middle of that element. So it won't actually, it shouldn't actually fire till we get to the bottom of it. Let's change it there. There we go. You can see it's waiting for us. And as we get the bottom is exposed, should have fired. There we go. It finally fired. So we could play with the timing of this one a little bit. And let's do here, layer in view. Great. Or how about on scroll? We could do it that way as well. And we just want to delay this a little bit. Let's just delay. And actually, I don't like that spin. So let's just come in here and we'll take the spin off of it. And we'll just keep the element happening. And let's just do maybe layer in view, section in view, maybe layer in view like that. Try one more time. There we go. As soon as it was in view, it scaled up to us. So that's a pretty cool effect. I like that. And we can do the same. Our thing is already moving here. We can do the same for each one of our little elements here. And again, you can componentize those. We're working on one and just updating the content. And our layouts are all there. And we will stop there actually, because there is a little bit more work that could be done to finish this, but I think that you get the point here. We have created a fairly responsive, successful design, and we've done all of it in a very short amount of time using Framer, and all of that has come from our custom design over inside of Figma. The last step of this process is to publish your website by hitting that big blue button in the top right-hand corner. And when you do that, Framer is going to give you a staging domain. You can also add your own custom domain, but you're able to send this staging domain to your clients, link it up to their custom domain, and then you can improve or upgrade that account to a paid account so you get access to SEO, localization, CMS, all sorts of really cool stuff. But this website is basically minutes away from being published live to the web. And this process, although it's gone through many iterations over the years because the tooling has changed and maybe some of the gear, the tips and the tricks and the products have changed, the process has remained the same. It's solving problems through that 4-step process. And again, that 4-step process looks like strategy, structure, design, and development. And now, right now, at this moment in history, you as a web designer are able to do all of that, to make a really good living doing that, and to make amazing projects and fill your portfolio with awesome clients and work. You don't have to depend on somebody else because the tools are here. So I hope this course was helpful to you. If it was, if you watch this whole thing, make sure you leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to do a lot more of these long free courses to really empower you and equip you to be a successful freelance designer. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments, and make sure you check the description for a bunch of helpful tools and links and tips that I mentioned throughout this long course. And if you want more stuff like this, consider joining my Design Champs community. Become a design champion, take more courses there, and improve your skills of business and design to build the career of your dreams. I hope you're having an amazing week. I hope you're designing amazing things, making amazing things, growing and crushing in your business. We'll see you in the next one.